Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the August 8th, 2023 City Council meeting. We will establish a quorum and call the meeting to order.
Councilmember Barton?
Here.
Councilmember Edwards?
Here.
Councilmember Landrum?
Here.
Councilmember Ford?
Here.
And Mayor Wixom.
Here. With that, I'd like to observe a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. Councilmember Barton, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Okay. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see everyone. Since we've had a month off, it feels like a long time. So we're going to move into closed session report. Mr. Newmeyer.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. No closed session items to report.
Thank you, Mr. Newmeyer. With that, we will go to Mayor and Council member reports and updates, and I will start to my right with Councilmember Barton.
Well, it's been a nice to have some time off and get to go a few places. I went down to San Diego to visit my kids, and aside from that, have been working on a variety of other projects at home. And so, anyway, I'm happy to be back.
Thank you, Councilmember Landrum.
I'm going to reserve my time. Thank you. Or pass
Thank
it
you.
on.
Pass it on, Councilmember Ford.
Thank you, Mayor Wixom. I don't have anything to really report other than the fact that I attended the 4th of July Family Fun Day that was put on by the City of Morro Bay and our rec department. And I just want to say another successful event that was really family friendly and great, and just a really wonderful free way to celebrate the holiday and to enjoy the beauty that Morro Bay has within it. So I just wanted to say thank you to those who put the hard work into that event, and also the parade. So that's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Edwards.
I'd just like to say that I'm happy to be back. It was a nice respite, although I was able to catch up on a lot of things that, we're not normally able to do when we're reading agendas and reports and things like that. So it was a great time to be able to do that. I also wanted to give a shout out to Morro Bay and Bloom. The roses that were planted near the city park are absolutely beautiful. I encourage you to go and look at those. I also wanted to give a shout out to Central Coast Women's Fisheries and sponsors for the educational placards that are now along the Harbor Walk. If you haven't seen those, I really recommend that you take a stroll toward the rock, and you'll see them all along there. They're beautiful. I also had the opportunity during this time to catch up with community members and to talk about what's going on with them before we get going with the Downtown Design District Ad Hoc Committee, and talk about some various things that we're going to be doing there in terms of scope of work. I'm very excited to have the city manager, Yvonne Kimball, coming on board while we're looking at all that work. And I also wanted to say it was a beautiful morning walking my dog and seeing the San Salvador out off our shore. It's just a wonderful reminder of our maritime heritage and others' maritime heritage, and just a great reminder of how that education kind of intersects that history. So that's it.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. We had a month off. It was very, very busy in town the last month of July. I had the great opportunity to spend a week up at the fair with our local 4-H club and FFA chapters, so the kids did great. Morro Bay 4-H had 14 exhibitors, and they all did very well. It was a very, very hot fair in Paso Robles. So thank you. We also attended, the police department put on a great event last week and was supported by all the city departments. A lot of fun down at Del Mar Park for the night out, and it was a great outreach. Thank you for that and putting that together, Chief, and your group. I would like to invite the community to come out next Monday, August 14th at 10 a.m. as we do a oath of office for our incoming city manager, Yvonne Kimball. We'll be at the community center, and we hope that you'll be able to join us. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our city manager, Mr. Carpenter.
Mayor, we have a few announcements to make and one presentation, but I just wanted to take a chance to say thank you for this opportunity. This is my last meeting, and it's been a great experience. You all live in a truly beautiful place. I've met some really great people. I've had some really good experiences. You have some challenges going forward, but you have such a good group of people, and you care so much, and you're so committed that I really think you can't fail. So thanks again. It's been a great experience. And with that, I think Greg Kwolek has some announcements, followed by Chief McCrane, and then Ted.
Thank you. Two quick announcements. First, we have another wharf tour for anyone interested. It will be scheduled for September 21st. That's a Thursday. It'll be our 5th tour, including the open house. These book up very quickly, so once it hits the website, be sure to sign up. Second announcement is our local road safety plan community meeting is scheduled right here at Vets Hall on, I want to get the date right, I think it's September 6th. Yes, 5:30 on, it's Wednesday, September 6th at 5:30 here in the Vets Hall. That's where folks who have concerns in the community about roadway safety, crosswalks, speeding, that kind of thing, can come to the community meeting here and work with our city engineer and consultant on resolving and addressing those issues.
Good evening. I have a couple slides to show highlighting a new evacuation program that the county is rolling out. Okay. All right. So the county just launched a program called Zone Haven, and it's a countywide evacuation plan. They're going to be rolling out a public information campaign. The program just went live August 1st. This presentation was done by Scott Jalbert, the Emergency Services Manager for County OES, and then I've added a couple Morro Bay specific slides. This is just for information for the public. So a little bit of background on this. Starting in 2019, the county fire chiefs, the Criminal Justice Administration Association, and County OES pursued a grant to get a countywide evacuation system. It's based off of Santa Barbara County's model. Due to COVID and a busy fire season, the program was delayed. In 2020, Tascadero adopted this program and was the only area in the county utilizing it, and they had good success with it. In 2021, the county fire chiefs received a grant for this, and it's a 3-year contract that the county holds. And we have designated County OES as the lead agency for this. So the intent of this is for large-scale evacuations. It's not going to be utilized for small road closures and things like that. It's going to be utilized like when we had our winter storms and we needed to evacuate certain areas of town. It's meant for all hazards. It can be used for shelter in place, evacuation warnings, evacuation orders, and it's just another tool in the alert notification toolbox that the county can use to get the information out to the public. And this will help ensure that the public, first responders, and the media are all on the same page. We're looking at the same maps, talking the same language. So with this, the roles of it, the first responders will be the ones on scene and determining if this is evacuation orders needed. Law enforcement would be the ones to carry out the evacuation orders, and then County OES would do the public notification. The way we notify public, there's many different ways. So Zone Haven is just one factor in this. It's one tool that we're going to begin using. There's also the WIA or wireless alert notifications. That's kind of what you would see like when you get an Amber Alert on your telephone. reverse 911, television, radio, through the news, and then the county's Ready Slow website is also a landing place for this. So what the program is called Zone Haven, and Zone Haven was just bought by a larger corporation, so the name will be changing to Genesis. And there's going to be a website. You can go to readyslow.org and type in your address, and it'll bring up a zone that you live in. Here's a picture of what the Morro Bay zones look like. We have 13 zones here in our city, and you'll just want to know what your zone number is. There'll be an application you can download called Genesis Protect, and it would give you an alert on your phone that says your zone that you live in has an evacuation warning or a shelter-in-place notification. It also follows you, so if you're traveling throughout the county and you're in an area where there is an evacuation warning, it'll pop up and tell you that something has changed in that area. So I'll put the notification on the city website with information about this, how to get the application. Tonight was just a quick overview to let the public know that this is out there. It's becoming used. Some of the things you'll see on the app are little symbols that show things like schools, childcare, evacuation points, temporary evacuation shelters, road closures. And with this, the notifications, they'll be coming through the Sheriff's Watch Commander, and it'll direct everybody to the readyslow.org website. This will be used in conjunction with the other notification systems, just another tool. And finally, the app, you can see Genesis Protect there. If you go to any app store on your phone, you can download that app and type in your address to follow those zones. And again, it'll pop up with a push notification on your phone for you. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any more questions about it. There's going to be a lot of information coming out from the county about this program. So I don't want to spend too much time on it tonight, but just to make everybody aware that this is coming.
Thank you.
And Mayor, if you recall, you had asked that we schedule some regular presentations relative to progress with the offshore wind industry and how it may or may not affect Morro Bay. So we plan on bringing these forward on a regular basis as we have things to report on, and our harbor director, Ted Chaffone, will make the first presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Mayor Wixom, council members, thank you again for the opportunity to share more information. The last update was in early June. It covered basically all the activity from February through the offshore wind that was hosted by the harbor for the three lease companies here at Morro Bay. Tonight is going to be just a summary of recent activity, but I want to let you know that I am preparing a full presentation of activity that will be presented at the joint council meeting on September 26th, and that is going to include details of all activity, provide some information on the three leaseholders so that we all know who they are and where they come from. Also a description of the agencies involved, the local, state, and federal agencies, a summary of the more important legislation that has occurred affecting the development of offshore wind, and basically a timeline of future activities that we expect to see over the next coming years. So today is really a summary of recent activity. It's been really just three notable events that have occurred. There's been a number of minor events. Those have been things like phone calls from consultants and different companies that want to know a little bit more about Morro Bay. I know we obviously have no contractual agreements with them. They're basically inquiring about our facility here at Morro Bay. The first event came about as a requirement of AB 525. That was a stakeholders meeting the following week after we hosted the offshore companies here at Morro Bay. That was held here at Vets Hall. That was a requirement from AB 525 for the California Energy Commission to develop a strategic plan for offshore wind. That requires them to include a permitting roadmap, an infrastructure improvement plan, and again, this is a draft plan that was due to the state on June 30th of 2023. We have not seen any part of that draft plan at this point, but we expect in the future that that will be publicly disclosed. The second notable event was a contact by a survey company who's been hired by one of the offshore wind companies looking for the ability to load survey equipment at Morro Bay. Again, that's an informational meeting with this company, providing them data as it relates to the harbor and capacity and all of those issues. No agreements or contracts of any kind have been discussed or made at this time. And the third notable event was a meeting with the Equinor team, and that included their full contingent of individuals that are involved here in the offshore wind project. It was pretty much another informational meeting. They provided quite a bit of information regarding what they've done on the East Coast. They are currently developing a project off the East Coast of the United States. A lot of it had to do with the community benefits and basically explaining some of the different areas that they've supported those communities. And another piece that came out of that was what can we expect in the next year or two. This year is basically a pre-survey meetings and planning stage, so they're pretty much engaged with BOEM at this time, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. And in the next year, we can begin to see some of the surveying that's going to be required to do out in the offshore wind sites. So that's what I have for you this evening. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Ted. And I think that just to piggyback on that, when you talked about surveying, it's about the fish survey and the marine life survey, just to be specific. And also, I think they included information that they would be starting their community outreach information in September. They'll be releasing that, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Mr. Carpenter, anything else? So before we move into our presentation from the chamber, actually the council would like to steal a few minutes to recognize you and thank you, Mr. Carpenter. We've appreciated your time here as our interim city manager. I appreciate your thoughtfulness and your concern to the community. So thank you for that very much. And I'm going to turn it over to the other council members here.
I'll go next. All right, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Carpenter, I just want to say that one of the hopes that I had knowing that we were going into this transition is that the transition would be as smooth as possible and we wouldn't fill a huge gap or that we were in trouble in the meantime until we had our replacement. And that never crossed my mind during this period of time. And I attribute that to your skills. And I also want to thank Ms. Johnson-Rios for pitching you to us and bringing you to Morro Bay because we've been in great hands. And I've learned so much from your experience. I have to say, I appreciate our therapy sessions every week. I call them therapy because they are very therapeutic in so many ways and eye-opening. So I just want to thank you for all that you've brought to our city, to our staff, the knowledge, your experience, and your love for all city business. I just really appreciate your service. Thank you.
I'd like to piggyback off of that, saying therapy is probably about right. I'm just very grateful for your energy, your calm way about you. It really helps me at ease when I am not. And I appreciate your experience because you bring it from so many different types of cities and environments. And I think that it was very valuable for us going into many of the things and issues that are coming to the city and around us. And I think that I really appreciate you, and I hope that you definitely don't disappear on us. Come back and visit.
Councilmember Barton.
Well, it has certainly been a pleasure to have you here during this time, filling in for us, and it was fun to get to know you and know more about your experiences in the city management field. I've worked with a lot of city managers over the years, and you are definitely a cool cucumber, and so it's been nice to have you here. Thank you so much.
I just want to say I so appreciate Ms. Johnson-Rios' recommendation and will next time she recommends something, I will definitely take her up on it, because I can't imagine having a better interim city manager. You've been just amazing, and this job has come with plenty of issues, but you've provided a calm confidence that I think is felt and appreciated by all of us and by staff as well. You've held our hand through choosing a new city manager, which was, quite a task, and so many other issues, while remaining fair, respectful, and really, you can tell that you care. And I just want to thank you for your professionalism, and you've been a pleasure to work with.
Thank all of you. But first of all, I just kind of get to lead a really effective team of people that tell me what to say and where to go, and you're in really good hands with your executive team. And then finally, I shouldn't say this publicly, but I think I get more out of this experience and out of being an interim city manager than I give back. And I'm not talking about pay. It's all about being part of a group of people and working with people that really care about their community and getting accepted and appreciated for my work. So thanks again.
Well, you are greatly appreciated, and we hear a lot from the community too, in how you've interacted and been so positive for them. Thank you. But we do have a little homework we want to give you. So. But I will see you tomorrow meeting. Okay, with that, we have a presentation this evening from the Morro Bay Chamber of Commerce, and I will turn it over to their executive, Erica Crawford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're good. Where do I point it? It here? Okay. Thanks a lot for having me this evening. I'm Erica, the President and CEO of the Morro Bay Chamber of Commerce, here to provide an update on the last 3 months of our activities related to economic development and service of our contract with the city. So I always start with who we are. We are an independent nonprofit corporation. We're a Chamber of Commerce. We're incorporated with the Secretary of State in California. We have a 12-member board of directors. They govern with bylaws for the organization. We have 3 full-time staff members, including me. And the board has 2 advisory boards or advisory bodies. One is in governmental affairs and the other is in the ambassadors committee. And we have 307 members at the moment, and that represents about 2,800 jobs. We are citizens and we are residents. Our chamber staff, board, and committee members, 84% of them not only work in Morro Bay but also live here. 95% live in the Estero Bay and 100% live in SLO County. And we share information. We've been putting a lot more energy into communications. I have a full-time communications coordinator on staff. We primarily communicate on social through 2 platforms, that's Facebook and Instagram. The reason I'm calling out top cities is to communicate to the community and to you that when we are sharing information like road closures or things that are impacting the business community, the top cities that we're hitting is our own backyard. So we are being effective in that communication. We have a website. Since the first of the year, we've had 16,000 users, 32,000 page views. 54% of our users of the website are just going to Google and typing in Morro Bay Chamber of Commerce, so it's organic. Our newsletter goes out to 1,175 contacts every Wednesday. And we do take out a full-page ad in our Morro Bay Life newspaper that gets direct mail to every household in Morro Bay every month. And again, when we're communicating or when we're doing things in service to the contract for the public, we do advertise that in the Morro Bay Life and on our newsletters. The newsletter is for everyone, not just chamber members. So when you go to our website, a little dialogue box that's in purple will pop up. All you have to do is put your email in. You will receive our communications. You can easily unsubscribe if it's not for you. And then on the right-hand side, that's our website. We just added a new tab under our business resources tab of frequently asked questions. This is some of the questions that have percolated to the top when we were out doing our listening tour. Some of the highlights on this FAQ are, where is or how do I get my business license? I need help with, bird guano or sidewalk issues or potholes in front of my storefront. We point you to the service request. Who should I call about homelessness impacts on my business? And I just wanted to point out, and I put some of these in the back. This is a resource page on sort of how to interact, best practices with the unhoused community. We have such a compassionate community, so much care in the community, that it's not always an emergency situation, and we do have so many resources in the community for business owners and community members at large to lean on. Also on this page are resources for hiring or training employees and signing up for Notify Me through the City of Morro Bay to get information like press releases, agenda correspondence, RFPs. So present day, the state of the world right now for the Chamber and Cities Economic Development Agreement. We are in an agreement that runs through June of 2024. It is defined by a very specific scope of services, and those services are delivered on with the Chamber Board's approval, at the City Council's pleasure, and in close coordination with City staff. The guiding principle for our services, or as a service provider for the city, is that economic development will be delivered best in Morro Bay if it's deeply rooted in the community. So it's all about creating and maintaining strong relationships with existing and prospective businesses, all the ancillary services, builders, general contractors, property owners, real estate brokers and agents, and definitely SBA-funded agencies like SCORE and the Women's Business Center. And how do we help? We have a program, it's called the Roadmap to Success. It's about business retention and expansion, not so much about business recruitment with the Roadmap program. We can provide assistance to anyone who calls us for access to capital, marketing programs, or marketing plan assistance. We do a lot with permitting. Since January 1st, we've helped 27 brick and mortars of existing businesses in Morro Bay, 24 prospective businesses and nonprofits doing like special events, and 9 property owners with encroachment permits, application of Muni code to development projects. Just last week, I met with Scott Graham and 2 property owners to sort of sort something through with permit process streamlining, or just really understanding a pathway forward to getting projects done in our community. Construct and impact mitigation, I heard a road's going to be closed. How am I going to communicate to my customers to get to my store? What's my business access plan? So we can help with all of these, and we do. A lot of my time, I wanted to share, how I spend my time in service of the contract. I interact with the City of Morro Bay. I'm in weekly and bi-weekly meetings with City Manager and Community Development Director. I'm pulled in as needed on development review team meetings, on submitted projects, and of course I'm giving quarterly updates to the community and the council. I interact with business. This is the majority of my time. And the ombudsman role is real. I'm an independent sort of intermediary trying to address snags in permitting or issues or just lack of awareness on how things work at the lowest possible level. They hit me first so that we're not going into your staff and asking them to devote their resources to problems that I can help solve. A lot of my time is spent on consultations and orientation to the community, public relations and education. There's been a lot of questions about, what is the lease management policy? We can talk about that and point to resources. We do walk-in talks for businesses, not just people who are interested in doing business in our community, but also people who have already made investments and want to get to know their neighbors. So we do walk-in talks with them. And of course, our website is open with open access resources 24/7. I'm also in the contract interacting with local and regional partners. So I sit on the practitioners network with the regional economic development organization called REACH. That is a working group. It's economic development professionals who meet monthly to collaborate, coordinate, and share leads and information. We talk about downtown revitalization projects, economic development strategic plans. I also attend the local Economic Development Council for Cal Poly. We meet again on Thursday. We meet quarterly. I'm in touch with SLO County's Economic Development Office, Cal Poly SBDC. We refer so many of our local businesses to SBDC to become clients because all of their programs are free. And of course, Visit Morro Bay. I like to say I'm like a housemate with Michael Wombold, who's their executive director. We work in the same office and we're consistently collaborating. And we're doing all of this to really align Morro Bay's economic resiliency efforts with those of the region. We spent quite a lot of time in the last 2 months, 7 open meetings to the public in each of our 4 economic centers. We called it a listening tour. So we did the first 4, and this is what we heard. Issues, and this was like an open forum, kind of open floor. We want to listen to you. What's it like doing business in Morro Bay? We heard about workforce and housing issues, cleanliness and appearance of the town, small business nuts and bolts needs like trainings, harbor percentage rents, taxes, what we heard. Events on holiday weekends, kind of pulling traffic away from our year-round 24/7 brick-and-mortar businesses, homelessness business impacts, road closure impacts, the need for a public restroom in the downtown, tree and infrastructure issues, and then a real want and desire for district identity. And because we heard some of these issues come up 2 years in a row, we decided to really pause and have a moment of reflection and process these findings with the business community. So we held another 3 open meetings. Through that process, we really kind of arrived at the idea that collaboration between the public and private sectors is positive. Many thanks to so many of your staff who contributed to these report out sessions. Ted Chiffone came in 5 stars with a full-on PowerPoint presentation addressing harbor percentage rents and lease management policy, and all of the city department heads and City Manager Carpenter, thank you very much for coming and sharing strategic plans. We did have some fun with it at the last meeting. We encouraged the meeting attendees to come up with some big, bold ideas for how we could move forward collaboratively. So I've included those. I think some of the actionable ones are, city should host a weekly stay open late on the same night, all 4 districts, or contract custodial services for all the restaurants and facilities in the harbor. We heard a lot about lights and public safety and also placemaking. So kind of getting lights in all the business areas and helping businesses stay open late to make these districts alive through activity. And we took action, so it wasn't just about coming up with ideas. We actually put them into action. We created that FAQ page that's updated. We created the homelessness resources page. We catered our existing program called Breakfast Across the Bay to social media nuts and bolts trainings and branding trainings, and a breakfast on homelessness business impacts. And we've also been promoting the service request feature on the city's website at every turn. These are some of the events that we did. And this is it. 2 more slides. Just looking ahead, I think what we heard with this idea that we want to stay open late and we want to have nightlife and we want to do things, we want to stay open late on a kind of common night. We already have a program at the Chamber called Shop, Sip, and Stroll, and we've been planning it for Thursday evening, 2 Thursday evenings in September. The one we did in spring brought about 150 people to each economic center at night when we held them. And as we were planning it, we realized, gee, Tunes at Tidelands is happening on Thursdays in September, and Buttercup Bakery is doing a whole concert series on Thursdays in September, and the Savory Palette does an open mic, and Siren books talent. So I thought we really have something. Secret season is in full swing, something about Morro Bay on Thursdays in September. So started to talk to Michael about how can we coordinate marketing, how can we package this, how can we get our small businesses involved to stay open late on this one night. So that listening tour and that time engaging with our business community is already kind of yielding results. The Shop, Sip, and Stroll, shameless plug. We are selling paper tickets this year. Businesses wanted to do that, and it'll drive traffic into their storefronts. The last slide, it's never really too early to talk about the holidays. So I know it's only August, but effort takes time to coalesce. So we have been talking to partners, Embarcadero master leaseholders, Visit Morro Bay. I've been talking to a contractor about doing light installations, and I just think that we can work together to get things really going organically. We've been talking to service clubs as well about maybe doing a window decorating contest and things like that. And I did put the banners that we produced as part of the scope of work on placemaking initiatives as sort of an example that we started there and now we're growing into the community and making sure we're getting people involved in having some things going on in December in our community. And that is my update. I'm here, happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Any questions? Pretty good? Thank you, Erica.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. With that, we'll move into public comment. I have a few speaker slips I'm going to start with, and after that, we will open it up to the general public. These are items not on the agenda or that you can't stay for. First up is Judy Salamanca, followed by Linda Winters, please.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Very exciting day for the Maritime Museum and for Morro Bay. The San Salvador came in 2 days earlier than we anticipated, and I want to congratulate Morro Bay and all the departments that we have worked with because we just rocked today. Everything was beautiful. We had boats out there that were greeting, even though they didn't know about it until last night. And a couple of weeks ago, we had training already done right here in this room, thanks to our recreation department. We had the Coast Guard went out. The Harbor Department boat went out for greeting, and several of the boats from the Yacht Club went out to greet. And we also had the dock. It's really this big galleon. If you haven't seen it yet, go down to the dock and see it. It's just stunning. But it is very difficult to get into small places. It's a replica from 1542 that took 10 years to build by the San Diego Maritime Museum. But it perfectly fit back into its slot that it was in 2016. And everybody was able to unload. They were very tired. They went out to dinner here in Morro Bay tonight. And they also, thanks to Visit Morro Bay, they will be spending 12 days at Coastal Breeze, right across the street from the Hungry Fishermen, so they got breakfast to go to. And then the media grant. The messages are all out there. And thanks again for Visit Morro Bay. The Chamber of Commerce got excellent video today, and so go online to your social media network and see the video of the San Salvador coming to Morro Bay. Thank you all.
Good evening. My fondest wish is to speak as fast as Erica Crawford. I am Linda Winters, and a 29-year resident here in Morro Bay in the same mobile home park. I hope you all had a great hiatus from council meetings. It's been 6 weeks since we all were together. I don't know about you, but I've been very, very busy doing things for mobile home park residents within the 14 mobile home parks here in Morro Bay. I did attend one city meeting with Scott Graham over here, the Planning Commission. I just didn't want to get too rusty. It all had to do with affordable housing, and mobile home parks. Parks were made mention in this particular meeting, and I've received a lot of extra attention due to 2 articles in 2 local publications. I will shamelessly show one of these publications. I don't know if you can see it or not. It was the San Luis Tribune, and it was all about affordable housing and the rent control ordinance that we have here in Morro Bay. My mission has always been to educate the people that live within the mobile home parks here in Morro Bay about their rights. The rent control ordinance of Morro Bay is strictly applicable to the people that live in the mobile home parks. And here we are on the front page talking about the last bastion of affordable living, i.e. mobile home parks. I couldn't be more happy at that this attention was made. I've received lots and lots of attention and inquiries about what can be done to preserve the rent control ordinance for existing residents. For those of you at the city, feel free to pass on my information to folks that would like to know more about their rights regarding rent control, affordable housing in mobile home parks, and the mobile home residency laws. I'm available. Oh, that didn't sound very good. Otherwise, I will be at the next meeting on August 22nd. It's good to see you all. Respectfully submitted, Linda Winters.
Thank you, Linda. Next up is Gloria Zion, please. And after that, it will be open to the remainder of the public.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. My name is Gloria Zion, and I'm a resident of Morro Bay. My husband and I bought our first vacation home here in 2011 and our second in 2016. We moved over here permanently in 2018. We love Morro Bay, have watched this town continue to improve and thrive in the past 12 years, and have witnessed it become a worldwide destination, especially for our 4 children and 4 grandchildren. I spent 35 years in education before my husband and I started a small business making Wicked Harvest bourbon whiskey in 2017. We were new citizens to the town, so we stopped by the Morro Bay Chamber. We thought we would be stopping by to pick up a few brochures, but instead, we met staff that were eager to help us find ways to fit in and hooked us up with 3 different businesses and events that day to help us know other blossoming companies and help promote our product. During COVID and our past floods of this year, it was the Chamber at the helm, helping businesses, owners navigate new roads, and to whom the businesses look to for support, guidance, and information. We love to live and work in Morro Bay, but we stay here because the economy continues to grow and develop, and businesses are supported. A town without successful, buoyed companies is waiting to wither away. Thankfully, that's not the case in our little town, because the city has supported the Chamber's efforts to help make this an endorsed destination. I am proud to be a Chamber member and of our work. As the treasurer, I have known many wonderful business owners. I serve because the staff and people on our board are passionate about seeing this town continue to achieve. They work hard and love this town just like I do. Thank you for letting me share my love for this city and for the Morro Bay Chamber of Commerce.
Public comment is open.
Good evening, Terry Simons. I'm so glad to be back. I'm so glad you're all back. We missed you. First of all, I didn't get a chance when you were passing out the congratulations, but I just wanted to speak at my part as a public member of what a wonderful job our interim city manager has done. I'm typically pessimistic or skeptical. When he came on board, I didn't even sense that anybody took a deep breath. It was just like right on through, and it's been that way ever since. I wish him his very best in his future pursuits. Hopefully we won't need him back again, but it would be nice to know that he knows how to drop right in and get the job done. Erica Crawford, an amazing powerhouse of a person. And at the risk of being my normal derogatory self, you see it coming, don't you? I've spent a lifetime as a paid consultant doing primarily development projects. One might say economic development projects, buildings, subdivisions, these sorts of things. And so I understand the role of a economic development consultant. And I think it's wonderful that Erica is available to us through the Chamber of Commerce to help promote our community's economic development. I do have a serious concern that there is a perceived possible conflict of interest to have someone who, in her own slides, point that out, serves at the direction of her board of directors at the Chamber of Commerce and at the will of the city. And yet the city pays a tremendous amount of money to the chamber basically for her promotional services. I was a little disturbed that the actual underlying contract was not included in the staff report, so I don't really know of where I speak. But I would hope that as you're reviewing this, that we can look at the contract language and make sure there's a clear differentiation between the services she provides for her board of directors under their direction and those general services that she provides for the city to promote economic development. There seemed to be, in some of the correspondent letters, a great concern that the city would hire an independent Department of Economic Development. If you do that, I hope you have her resume handy, because I think she would be a great addition to work for city. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Anyone else for public comment?
Betty Winholtz. I had the opportunity this summer to visit a couple of other city council meetings, and I want to push a point that I've tried to push for the last 6 or 9 months, and that is, and it came up when Ms. Silamaka had her poster but couldn't show it. And they have the same setup that we have, and yet they had an overhead projector that they could put something on and show it right there and then go back to the computer. So I would encourage you, as we redo or have redone our electronics with AGP here in the Vets Hall, that maybe that's a piece of equipment that they could look at, and maybe they already know about it since they do the other cities in the county as well. The other topic I want to mention is that with a bit of disappointment, I frequently, as you know, write to all of you regarding city council agenda items as a group. On occasion, very rarely, I will write to each of you or some of you individually. And I did that this week, and I want to express my disappointment that I did not get responses from Ms. Barton or Ms. Ford. And I would hold up as an example of that someone that you all admired, and that was former council member Red Davis. And regardless of political leanings, he was always willing to meet with anyone. And so I would encourage all of you to, when people reach out to you, that you reach back. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Betsy Gaudette Cross, and thank you for letting me speak this evening. I just threw something together on my phone. I apologize. So I'm here first to thank all the residents or the registered Morro Bay residents who signed the initiative for the Citizens for Estero Bay Preservation. And we are turning them in tomorrow to Dana Swanson, our city clerk. And we have spoken to many organizations, shared information that we have learned over the past 10 months, and we feel very happy with the community's response. On my walk this afternoon, one of my neighbors, who's a fireman, asked me if I had seen a video on YouTube. It's by Firescope, and it's on lithium-ion batteries. It's about 15 minutes long, and I highly recommend that everyone on the city council watch it, as well as the employees of the city or anyone, members of the community. It starts out very technical about batteries, but then it goes on about how impossible they are to put out. And I have a QR code on paper, so all you need to do is point your phone camera and it will start playing. And again, as I said, it's about 15 minutes long, and it will like make you, it will open your eyes. On another topic, we on the committee are often asked about the wind farm project, and I want to put it out there to all the citizens of Morro Bay. someone needs to take up this mantle and run with it, because those of us on this committee are still working on accomplishing our goal, and I think we need other representatives of the community to get involved if they have any questions or concerns about the wind farm. And one more thing, the chamber, is it Erica? Just mentioned that she talked about making Morro Bay the Austin of California, which would be really very cool. And one of the things that I've been telling people that would be perfect down there for, instead of the best plant, is an amphitheater, along with a youth sports complex. And of course, we could have a couple of big rooms for conferences and conventions and weddings, but the amphitheater would go right along with what the chamber was suggesting. So thank you very much.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, esteemed council members and city staff, and fellow residents. My name is Jeff Eccles. I am a resident of Morro Bay and a former business owner of Morro Bay. If you hadn't heard, I sold the Morro Bay House of Jerky about 2 months ago to a wonderful young couple here in Morro Bay. I founded that establishment, that brick and mortar, 13 years ago. It had, frankly, unexpected success. Some of my friends bet me how long it would last until it closed down. Right in front of me, they did that too. So I knew they were real friends anyway. Since then, I'm happy to report we have literally sold millions of dollars of jerky from that location. And the folks who bought it, again, a young couple, natives, third generation natives of the Central Coast. So support that business if you can. I'm here actually to talk about housing-related issues. I wear a different hat. I'm the CEO of the Housing Trust Fund for San Luis Obispo County. The Housing Trust Fund is a nonprofit lender, community lender for affordable housing throughout the county. We're celebrating our 20-year anniversary this year, and over those 20 years, we have lent out over $40 million, just approaching $40 million in 64 different loans, which has accounted for over 1,300 units of affordable housing in our county. So it's a notable accomplishment over the last 20 years, and I took over as CEO a little over a year ago. For my late night viewing pleasure, I watch the planning commissions, and if I can't get to the council meetings, I watch the council meetings on our YouTube channel. So thank you to the city for putting those up. The sooner you can get them up, the better, by the way. Sometimes it takes a while. At the Planning Commission meetings, there have been some interesting discussions regarding objective design standards. I attend lots of countywide meetings regarding housing. So I wanted to bring it to your attention and to staff's attention. Both Grover Beach and Arroyo Grande are doing extensive work right now on their objective design standards. So I think there's an opportunity for collaboration, or at least observing what they're doing. Same thing with the Downtown Design District. A while back, the City of SLO passed a downtown flexible density ordinance, and it was deemed to be quite an accomplishment as well. And then lastly, this morning, today's my municipal day, I suppose, I spoke before the County Board of Supervisors. If you remember 6 weeks or so ago at your special meeting, you considered the Housing Infrastructure Plan, which is now deemed the Housing Infrastructure Framework. And if you get a chance, tune into that. There was some very lively discussion this morning at the supervisors meeting. I'll leave it at that. But they did pass the framework with quite a bit of comment. So I think it's going to be a useful tool for the 8 jurisdictions in our county moving forward. Thank you all for what you do for our city. We appreciate your service.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Good evening, Mayor and Council. Susan Stewart, business owner in town, and I lived here from '88 until 2021. I am now in Baywood Park, and just wanted to let people know that South Bay Boulevard is going to be closed from 7 at night until 6 in the morning on August 13th, 14th, and 15th. So that's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I know we share a lot between our communities, so anybody commuting or doing some evening event, keep that in mind. Like going to Planning Commission next week, might have to leave early. Also, just heard today that the Bay Theater is in escrow. The thing that concerns me about this is we're still sitting on a draft historic preservation ordinance that our planning commissioners have not chosen to look at yet. It was put together by members of the community and the Historical Society who tried to do at least a good generic version to get started from, and nobody started it. Kind of ties in also with the downtown district guidelines, whatever we're looking at for that. While we're sort of waiting on these things and not doing them, folks are coming in and buying properties in our downtown, and we may or may not have anything to say about what they become. So I'm hopeful that we get moving on that stuff. I'm hopeful that the new owners of the theater want to do what the town would like to see done, but we don't know, and we have no control because we don't have anything in place. So my urge to all of you would be, let's put the pressure on people and get something going. Thank you. Anyone else? AGP, do we have anyone in the queue?
Yes, we have 2 people in the queue. Right now, we have an anonymous person with their phone number. We're going to start with them. Caller with ending in 009, you are now unmuted. You can talk.
Great. Good evening, City Council and Madam Mayor. I am James Worthley, the Planning Director for the San Luis Obispo Council of Governments for SLOCOG. I want to provide your council and listening public with an update on our region's transportation funding efforts and challenges. And we seek feedback from you and the public through our website and survey tools. SLOCOG is your regional transportation planning agency, and Mayor Wixom is one of our board members. SLOCOG receives state and federal gas tax funds to improve transportation in all cities and communities within SLO County. In Morro Bay, a familiar project would include the bike lanes that are parallel to the Quintana Roundabout, the Harbor Walk, the transit services that we bring to you. Now, to receive and spend state and federal funds, SLOCOG is required to develop a long-range 20-year regional transportation plan. But transportation is funded by the gas tax, and increased conservation along with hybrid and EV technology has led to declining revenues from it. Because of this, our plan identifies a $2.3 billion shortfall for our local improvements for safe routes to school, transit, bikeway expansion, senior transportation, for downtowns, for safety, and for potholes and maintenance as well. We can continue to rely solely on state and federal gas tax, but that means falling further behind, or we can do what other regions have done. 25 California counties, including Santa Cruz, Monterey, Santa Barbara, have a dedicated sales tax that is guaranteed to deliver their most needed transportation improvements. Every year, they have $25 million to $50 million more than SLOCOG, each to put toward their transportation improvements. And these counties, they use their funds as large match dollars to bring more state funds to them. We don't have those funds here. We're losing out on tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in grant funding because we can't offer larger matching funds. A dedicated transportation sales tax for our cities and counties would raise nearly $1 billion and could capture another $1 billion back from Sacramento, and every city and community could see their most needed projects delivered faster and cheaper than if we continue to rely on the diminishing gas tax to fix our problems. We want your input on what is most needed. I sent an email today to each council member as well as to your key staff, and we encourage members of the public to visit our website at localroadsfirst.com to learn more and for them to identify what is most needed. We can offer a presentation to your local clubs and organizations and committees so they can get more information and also provide input. Again, for more information, go to localroadsfirst.com and to schedule a presentation, contact SLOCOG, and we'll hook you up. Thank you.
All right, and next we have up is Judy. Judy, you're allowed to talk. Hello, Judy. Are you there, Judy Lynn? You're currently have yourself muted. If you could unmute yourself, please. Right. You should be able to talk now. Judy, if you want to talk, now would be the time. Are you there? Unfortunately, we are not able to hear Judy, and that is the last person in queue. Thank you.
Thank you, AGP. With that, we will close public comment and bring it back to council. Thank you all for your comments, and Judy for sharing on the San Salvador. We're going to have a great week here with them in town. And Susan Stewart, I would share that the historical ordinance is on our agenda for our joint meeting with City Council and Planning Commission on September 26th. So hopefully we can do something with that. We'll move on to the consent agenda, and I will open public comment on the consent agenda. I have one speaker slip from John and Natalie for A7.
Hello? Is this thing on? I know. Hello, Council. Hello, everybody here. Thank you so much for having us. We're really excited to be here. My name is John, or Jonathan Michael Novacek, as my mother would call me.
And I'm Natalie.
And we live in Cayucas, California. And I just have something to share with you all. Just got to cut the tension here a little bit. We're opening a sound bath and yoga studio here in Morro Bay, and we're so excited to be here. If you experience stress, tension, or trauma from your past, we hope you all come out and get to know us. We're here to support the community, really excited to be here, and just excited to have this opportunity to talk to everybody. We're even going to be offering classes for veterans and service members, led by a veteran. We have a trained therapist on staff. We have sound baths every night of the week, which is really exciting. And if you've never had a sound bath, it's like the easiest way to relax. You just lie down. How's that sound? Yeah, it's awesome. It's great. And I just want to say thank you. That's all I have, dear.
Just thank you. We're so excited to be here.
We're going to hang out afterwards. If you have any questions, come up, say hi. We'd like to get to know you. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did I do okay? We're good? Yeah? I got. Oh, she stopped my clock. I'm out of here.
Job. Public comment for consent items.
Betty Winholtz again. I do want to bring to your attention the email that I sent you regarding item A3. When this audience was here during that vote at your last council meeting, it was obvious to us, and we think to staff as well, and the council, that the vote was messed up, and that it really came across as a 2-1 vote. And so I would like to encourage you to take another vote, whether it's scheduled for tonight or another, just to clear the air and make sure that this is a clean item, that we don't need to have questionable activity, but that we need to have clear direction on what's happening with our council direction, and in terms of the roundabout in particular, because it's so controversial. And so I encourage you to amend the minutes and call for a vote either now or later. Thank you.
Terry Simons again, and I'm just following up on that comment. As you probably know, she and I normally are on opposite sides of issues, and that's not any different this time, except I do want to support her concerns regarding calling for another vote. I was in the front row, as is my tradition, and I was here for that vote, and it was very unclear as to what really happened and how it happened. And I think it would be in the best interest going forward. As a pro-roundabout person, I'd like to know that there was a solid 3-2 votes for that issue. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment on the consent agenda? AGP?
There are no raised hands. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, I'll close public comment on the consent agenda, bring it back to council. Council members, does anyone want to pull any of the items?
I'd like to pull A3.
A3. Anyone else? Councilmember Burton?
No.
Councilmember Edwards? No. Councilmember Ford? No. I'll ask for a motion for items A1 through A2, A4 through A9.
All right, I'll go ahead and move that we approve all items on consent excluding A3.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. A3, Councilmember Landrum.
I agree with the speakers that I think that that item was so, we received so much public comment from that, more than I've ever seen. And so it was clearly a really important issue to the community. And I agree with Mr. Simons. I was sitting right here and I didn't hear, it was confusing to me as well. And regardless of what we're voting for, I think it's really important to have integrity for our governmental process. And I think we should somehow address this. I don't really know what the best way to do that, but I think another thing is there was very little council conversation regarding this issue. So it was hard to really know. It wasn't very clear on why certain votes were voted, you know. So I think it would just be helpful to the community to address it somehow. I'm not sure how to do that, but.
Any other council comments? One?
I think the reasons why we voted were pretty clear, but I understand the volume difficulty in that vote. So I agree with you on that part, but I don't necessarily agree with the second part regarding the reasons why we voted the way we did.
I guess I'm just basing that off of your comments or lack of them.
Well, I believe that there was plenty of comments leading up in the 6 hours that we went over the item, so I will agree to disagree.
Any comments?
Yeah, I think that there was plenty of comments. There was plenty of discussion. Comments and questions asked both in the initial meeting, which I can't remember the date, as well as some continued discussion, comments and questions on June 27th. So I am satisfied that there was enough on the second part, but I do agree with you on the first part.
And that's that there should be clear.
I think
regardless of the issue.
Clarity is
yes,
important.
yeah.
And so I agree with you, Councilmember Landrum and Edwards both too, and I don't think the vote's going to change, but I certainly do understand it was very confusing, and I need to take some ownership in that because I called the vote. I thought I heard a 3-2 vote, but apparently that was not factual, and we probably should have handled that very differently. We've certainly gotten a lot of comments since then. When the vote is called and you don't vote, that becomes an abstention, my understanding, or a no. It certainly wasn't a yes. So I don't know that the vote would change by us revoting, but I certainly agree with the comments made and agree that there was not clarity. And I will certainly be paying a lot more attention in the future and probably work with the city clerk on that, because I chose to do a voice vote rather than a roll call vote because we go alphabetical every time, and I wanted everybody to vote at once. So in the future, I think it's important for us, if somebody does not vote when the rest of us do, it will be an abstention or whatever the city clerk deems is the appropriate vote. And to revote, you're going to have to go back and start all over again. So it was not appropriate, and I will certainly take ownership in it. That being said, I don't think that the vote's going to change if we were to revote. So I'm open to moving this item, approving it, and moving forward, and focusing more on the future votes, that we are doing it more appropriately, but I don't believe coming back and voting again is going to change the vote. So I'm listening to other council members and what you would prefer.
I mean, unless Mr. Newmeyer has a better recommendation.
So how the council proceeds is a council decision at this point. The presumption is that when the presiding officer calls the vote, that is what the vote was, and the vote was called as a 3-2 by the chair. Those that were on the side of the motion that passed can make a motion for reconsideration, or staff could put this item back on the agenda again, and there could be another vote. So those are the options that the council has on this matter. But the presumption is that once the chair calls the vote, that is what the vote is. And my understanding is that evening, the city clerk confirmed with the council, with the chair, that was the vote that occurred. City clerk might want to speak to that. I was here that night too, and I know it wasn't a model of clarity, but the record is what it is for that night with how the vote was called.
Well, if you recall, maybe I didn't handle this as best way possible, but immediately following the vote, we did ask for Councilmember Barton to clarify what her vote was, and she indicated that she voted yes. So based on that clarification, based on the way the vote was called, we're comfortable with making the recommendation in the minutes that we're making that the motion passed. And just to be clear, this is really the very first vote I think that this council has taken on this item. You directed us to move forward with finding a design consultant, putting out an RFP, and coming back and starting that design process. And that will be the next time that this council gets to see this process. There'll be other votes throughout this process where the council, if they're dissatisfied with this direction, can change the direction that the project's going in.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Just for further clarification, in the future, the voting, I mean, how do we avoid this from happening again? How do we prevent this from happening again?
Well, it can be done, both by how you handle it, but also we're looking at the remodel of this building and potentially installing additional technology. You could install a vote screen, where you push a button for your yes, no, and then it appears on a screen as a way that many cities deal with this. Mm-hmm. So I think it could either be done operationally by how you conduct the vote, or we can install some technology to.
Well, until that technology is installed, do we have a way forward so that we don't?
That's just by doing a roll call vote. That's the only other option.
The only other option.
Yep. So with that, I will move approval of A3.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Before we start on to C, we have no public hearings. I think we'll take a 5-minute break. Thank you. everyone. Hello. Can you please take your seats or go outside? Thank you. With that, we're moving on to item C1, review. Excuse me. Review and comment on the scope of work for fiscal year 23-24 Economic Development Services contract with the Morro Bay Chamber of Commerce. And with that, I will turn it over to the interim city manager, Mr. Carpenter.
Mayor, I would like to announce that I'm going to recuse myself out of abundance of caution and due to potential conflict based on business financial interest. So I would have a walk.
Thank you, Councilmember Ford.
Mayor, members of council, as you heard earlier in this meeting, the city does have a contract with the Morro Bay Chamber of Commerce to provide economic development services. This is our business retention, recruitment, business assistance effort. And this is a novel approach. We have found it to be effective the past couple of years and a cost-effective way for a city, particularly a small city like Morro Bay, to provide these services. We do that through a contract that was approved by the City Council. We're entering the final year of that contract unless it's mutually agreed to extend it. And the work is performed consistent with the scope of work that was originally approved with the contract. It's been amended from time to time. The language in the contract foresees that the needs will change and allows for the scope of work to be changed, mutually changed administratively, meaning the city manager and the executive director can get together and make changes to it. But based on the emphasis that's been placed on economic development in your adopted strategic plan and the public interest in this effort, we thought it'd be beneficial to agendize this as an information item and get council and public input on the types of activities that the city should be focused on with assistance from the chamber in this next year. So we started the process by removing some tasks that were actually completed. There were some items that had been completed in the last year, like the feasibility study for the business improvement district. The banner program downtown has been implemented. So those items were taken out. There were some other items that maybe weren't as relevant based on the passage of time. So those were removed. And then as far as looking at tasks to be added, we're really focused on aligning the scope of work with the City Council's adopted strategic plan. You adopted a strategic plan with the budget a couple months ago, and it contained a number of efforts and actions that the chamber and staff can work collaboratively on to accomplish in this coming year. Examples include help with the downtown design district effort, assistance with the enhanced communications program that staff plans on kicking off. We also heard during the listening tour that you heard about that there were some efforts that the business community and the residents that took part wanted the city to focus on, things like potentially locating a publicly usable restroom downtown, events, special events and activities, assistance with the harbor leaseholders with potentially activating the Embarcadero at nighttime and holiday events there. So we've added tasks to reflect those. We've also added a task involving helping the new city manager with establishing business and property owner relationships. Those are examples of what has been added to the scope of work. You have the scope of work in front of you with the items that are being removed are in strikeout. We have new items in red. We have some continuing items that are included. But overall, we just wanted to take this opportunity to provide information to the council, to the public on what this contract is about, what the scope of work is. We're certainly open to hearing comments or thoughts about changes. Our intent would be to take any information that we hear tonight and work with the Chamber of Commerce and incorporate those where they're appropriate into the scope of work and then to start the work. So with that, we'd like to hear your thoughts, and I think we do have some speakers on this item as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carpenter. With that, I will open council questions. Councilmember Barton?
I don't have any questions necessarily. I'm pleased to see the list of items to be addressed and that some are finished and so are moving off the list. I think it's still it's a big benefit for the city to have this relationship that we have with the chamber, and I'm pleased to see it here presented in a way that it's easy to see it all at once. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Edwards, questions?
I think it's not so much a question as a comment. I think that all of us can agree that economic development is an important thing. And if we don't have, the staff wherewithal to coordinate and facilitate and handle all of the components of it, it's helpful to have an organization that can utilize its resources to help out. I mean, it brings to mind education of our community as being one of them that's been very big so far and been very helpful, not only to me personally as a council person and as a business owner, but to see all the community faces at those, like Breakfast on the Bay or some of those other things that people can attend in the community as well. So that was just main comment that I wanted to make at this point.
Thank you. Councilmember Landrum.
I've asked my questions already.
Thank you, as have I, and I will share them with my comments after public comment. So with that, I will open public comment on item C1. I have one speaker slip, Mr. Simons.
Back so soon. Thank you. My name is Terry Simons, resident of Morro Bay. The agenda item, staff report, is calling for public comment on a list of proposed modifications. The absent in the report, from my perspective, is a copy of the actual contract, because the contract is described as a consultancy contract, so to speak, for economic development services by the Chamber of Commerce. And in listening to the CEO presentation earlier, which was very informative, she described a recent incident where she had two business owners who she stewarded through the Community Development Department, apparently to resolve issues. That does not seem an appropriate use of this agency. I totally understand her representing the community at large, going to regional and other sorts of meetings, but I think, based on my understanding and what the staff report alludes to, it appears that the Chamber's representative has substantial direct input, a seat at the table, if you will, at numerous inside meetings, inside city government, inside various departments. And I think that's inappropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment is open on item C1.
Betty Winholtz. I had asked about 4 or 5 questions, and I hope that you will honor those and find the answers to them for us. One of them has to do with why the Public Works Department is involved in economic development with the Chamber. It doesn't seem like it would go together when you're working on sewer and water and trees and streets, and what that might have to do with developing businesses. So if you could clarify that. I think my biggest question for the next 3 questions is the vagueness of what's involved here. Assisting the new city manager, assisting a communications contractor, assisting the harbor department. Well, at least there it says, as he would like that to happen. And it seems to me that's where the impetus should come from, that if it's requested, then the chamber would step in, that the chamber isn't automatically involved in those kinds of things. and I will raise this as a side issue and ask for clarification now or later, but why is the city hiring a communications contractor? I'm not sure what that has to do with providing services of a city. So that just seems like an unusual expense to me. And the same would go for the city properties. Certainly, if the chamber being all about business, here's about people that are looking for property, they could hook them up with the city, but how closely does that happen? And so I would point you to what I sent to you in the email, and notice that all these different chambers at all the different levels, from federal to state to county to here, all talk about business, and certainly even Morro Bay's mission statement talks about business as being the primary goal. And I think it was very interesting that the SLO City Chamber of Commerce very specifically said that, quote, it's an independent, nonprofit corporation not affiliated with government or any other agency. And so I feel, unquote, so I feel like there's a little bit of a blend here, maybe as referred to by Mr. Simons, that we need to be cautious of that. And maybe that's something that will come next year when you redo the whole contract. But for now, maybe you could offer a little bit more clarity and less vagueness in the steps that are being proposed.
Anyone else for public comment on item C1?
Hello, Cherise Hansen, 25 years as a local business owner and resident, mother of 3 fourth-generation Morro Bay locals. I serve as the vice chair for the Morro Bay Chamber and the co-chair of its Governmental Affairs Committee. I volunteer tens of hours every week for the Chamber. I do so because I know the positive impact they have on my community and its future for my family and our ability to thrive here. I've been a member since I met Erica Crawford and found out she was the new CEO. I went to her when I was trying to save my business on the Embarcadero. The tools she gave me were monumental on our success. I wish I had her when I had my shop on Morro Bay Boulevard. I believe that the Morro Bay Boulevard is breathing new life thanks to Erica. She is a welcoming presence for new businesses. She goes the extra distance to aid in the difficult process of starting a new business in Morro Bay. She provides all the tools and services available for the road to success. I believe the new scope item of Downtown Design District will benefit with that effort. She will. She has been listening to all of the businesses in that area and acts in their best interest. Another time that she came to my economic rescue was during COVID. My future looked like it was shattered within days. The Chamber gave me the factual tools to navigate this uncertain future. My non-essential gift shop was shuttered, so I became a restaurateur, aiding my father-in-law to reopen Great American Fish Company. I was able to confidently move forward and open safely based on facts I was received by the Chamber and Erica. Eventually, I was able to convene my regular business, selling the items I love and items that make people smile. I recuperated knowing I was meeting safe and legal expectations. Since I've joined the board of the Chamber, and even before that, other businesses have looked to me for local government updates. I am proud to be a part of the Chamber and help the knowledge collecting so I can respond to my fellow business owners accurate and helpful information. I know that I have spoken to follow up. I've spoken to several people and I have followed up on them, and they received help in the last few years from the Chamber without needing to join the Chamber. Others have voiced their gratefulness for the Chamber to keep on current topics so they could concentrate on their businesses, knowing that their voices are heard even when they're not able to be present. As far as a new and improved scope, I know Erica in the Chamber will be a great person to add in the transitions of new staff. Not only does she bring the knowledge of our businesses' wants and needs, she also has a vast knowledge of city and county policies. I personally have sat on a few ad hoc committees with her, and her input has been factual, well-researched, and a benefit to the group. In the current climate of so many new heads of department new to the area and to their new job description, she will be a constructive asset. There's more, but I'll let it go.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else for public comment? Item C1.
Judy Salamanca, Morro Bay resident, and also on the board of directors of the Chamber of Commerce. Honorable Mayor, Mayor Wixom, and councilwomen, respectfully, I request to have you support the city managers, interim city can't talk now that I did the San Salvador one, but anyway, to support this concept. I am originally from another community who was struggling with the development of economic development, and it took an entire new organization to be formed in order to create what is being developed right here in our community with an organization that is already capable of doing that. I've been involved in the Chamber of Commerce as a member for many years, but mainly through media. And it was only to the last couple of years that I have actually been an active member and on the board of directors. And I'm very proud to say that the work has been excellent, and I really love the work that we're doing. I first met Erica on board the Papagallo her first week on the job. We sat next to each other, and it was the newly formed Maritime Museum that was planned when the San Salvador was here in 2016. And I have to admit that I had many experiences with the CEOs over the last 20 years that we have lived here, and some of them were disastrous. And then I sat next to Erica, and I knew instantly, just by the way she spoke, the way the love of the community, her ideas, in just that brief moment there, then many, many, many meetings after that, that board of directors had finally found the right person for the job. And I appreciate, and we appreciate everything that she is doing for us. Since 2020, we've demonstrated the Chamber believes in collaboration with the entire community. We will continue to expand our membership among more businesses and in our community. We'll seek those that we believe in the promise of a thriving Morro Bay, and we totally understand working together for our agreed common goals that will make us a kinder, proactive, focused community poised for success. Morro Bay is still a beautiful work in progress, and if we can set aside all of our misunderstandings and focus on what we can do together to make this a beautiful, thriving community, we will all be better off. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. Jeff Eccles, former business owner, but still a member of the Chamber of Commerce. Actually, the Housing Trust Fund is a member as well. I wanted to speak to the process of what you're doing tonight. I applaud and welcome this process, meaning you're stepping back and you're taking a look at the scope of this agreement. You're doing it publicly, you're doing it transparently, and I think that's the right way to do it. I think it's a good time for the city and the chamber to pause and take a look at it and have a healthy, open, honest, collaborative discussion. So I think we're on the right track. I would mention too that the arrangement that the chamber has with the city is a mutually beneficial arrangement. I think it benefits both the city as well as the business owners in town, and therefore benefits the entire society or community at large. And I want to emphasize a word that I just heard Judy use, and we use this a lot in these chambers, and that's collaboration. This is all about the fact that we're in the same boat together. You guys know I'm a captain too, so I love sea analogies. We're all in the same boat together. And when we collaborate and have these types of honest, open discussions, it helps us all row in the same direction and become much more effective in attaining the goals that we want to attain. So I think that's the essence of what we're doing tonight. We're working together in order to create as much positive impact as possible. Will there be some points of discussion or even disagreement? Of course there will. That's fine. But the idea is that we are a community. I want to emphasize that the business owners in town, almost all of us live here. We work here, we employ here. My 2 kids graduated from Morro Bay High and went to Baywood Elementary, Baywood. And so it's not an us against them situation. We are genuinely all in the same boat here. So let's work together to figure out what the most appropriate and best scope of the agreement is, and then join arms and move forward together. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Good to be here, and staff. Thank you very much. Michael Wombold, Executive Director with Visit Morro Bay, here to speak on behalf of C1. Visit Morro Bay believes our strongest assets are a small fishing village charm, the uniqueness of our independent businesses, and the nature. Morro Bay is potentially finding itself in the crossroads of economic development. We're blessed with an amazing destination that draws visitors from around the world to enjoy. Tourism also brings in roughly 20% of sales tax on top of TOT from there. But relying on tourism is a heavy task for any destination. From over-tourism to the lack of economic diversity to overcome unforeseen future obstacles. Both of these can affect our residents' way of life. We've learned some of these lessons through the pandemic, and we still have our future ahead of us. Economic development asks hard questions and seeks hard answers. It seeks the creation of job opportunities and revenues for a healthy economy and a city. Erica Crawford, President and CEO, is not one to shy away from hard questions and look for the hard answers. She looks to collaborate with the city and looks to have open doors to understand the process to see what best fits for this city. Visit Morro Bay's Board of Directors supports the collaboration on economic development that Morro Bay and the City of Morro Bay has worked to strengthen. And Visit Morro Bay is here to work with everybody to see our future brighter. Thank you.
Good evening again. Susan Stewart, business owner in Morro Bay, and former resident and former member of various governmental boards. And I guess what I was thinking was how different those experiences can be when you're raising your children here and they're going to school and you're a resident and your PTA and your 4-H and all of that, versus then owning a business and sort of getting through that, and then understanding from where you guys are sitting what government is like and where you guys are sitting, how things are run. And I think what's important in this contract that we have is how somebody coming in or having challenges or issues with a business can be shepherded through that process, which can be very confusing to new people. And frankly, we haven't had the best reputation as a city when issues come up with business and permitting and what that's all about. It's nothing that perhaps the city has done wrong, it's just confusing to people. That's not what they're used to. So I think as regards to Mr. Simon's comment that maybe it's an inappropriate relationship, I think actually it's very appropriate to have somebody helping folks through that process with the city leaders to streamline it and make it most comfortable and least burdensome on our staff. In regards to another public comment about why public works, well, if trees are falling on your customers, or if the roads are torn up, or if there's a flood, or if you're putting in new sewer lines and roads are closed for months on end, you need somebody to help make those notifications, make sure that city understands how burdensome it is and what we can do about it. So I think all of those relationships are important. Business doesn't exist in a bubble or a vacuum. We're part of the community, and we often need that help. And for all the great Notify Me programs, sometimes it's hard to get it. And I think we're lucky to have this kind of streamlined program to do it. I do also sit on the Government Affairs Committee, and there was a written public comment that was concerned about some of that legislative platform stuff. And I just wanted to say that that is deliberately not supportive of any particular program or business, or it doesn't take sides on anything. It takes a deep dive into issues and provides a tremendous amount of background information that then city staff, council can use, and commissioners can use. So I think all of that is really valuable stuff, and I hope you continue to support that. Thank you. Anyone else for item C1?
Good evening, Erica Crawford, CEO. I just want to make absolutely clear that our legislative platform for the Chamber of Commerce stands apart from this contract. Absolutely 100% clear. Nowhere in the scope of services is it indicated that city funding is used for the development of a legislative platform for which the organization that I'm employed leverages. So just want to make that super abundantly clear. Thank you.
I'm Lori Leskill, a new business owner. I actually dealt with the Chamber of Commerce and Visit Morro Bay. I represent the lodging perspective, where a lot of the tourism is coming into Morro Bay. I have a hotel, so people are asking me about what is there to do in town, where do we go, what businesses. So I am hopeful. I was a little bit dismayed when I first went around to the businesses, and there was a lot of negativity against the businesses closing, lighting. It just went on and on, night after night. It was actually daunting. So I'm hopeful that hopefully with Erica and Visit Morro Bay and some of the other tourism associations here, that they will embrace the change that is needed to keep our tourism happy and a good, clear message. We're safe, get out there, we're open. Some businesses may be closed, but if we can reach out to those business owners, like this is why you should stay open on a Friday and Saturday night. So I do like that C1 is out there. You guys are going to change the contract a little bit down the road, but I am supportive of continuing this because I, as a new business owner, was welcomed and I was unknown of a lot of areas. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment on item C1? AGP?
Yes, we have one person wishing to speak, and that's Judy Lynn.
Thank you.
Judy Lynn, you are now allowed to talk.
Greetings. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Very loud.
Oh, too loud?
There you go.
Step back.
That's good. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you, council members, for the opportunity to speak and for your service. A while back, I did a public request for invoices that reflect how the $100,000 allotment is spent. And I received invoices that were not itemized, and they did not show tasks and hours spent on tasks. And I feel that that is not fiscally responsible for our city to be part of. So I would like the council to request that invoices are itemized. And I'm a little concerned that the residents don't have a seat at the table. The businesses all do, and they have a representative, Erica, who's doing a wonderful job. I'm just inspired by her energy, her creative ideas. I know that she works hard. But the businesses are represented at city staff meetings through Erica. Residents are not. And that's of concern. And I've heard in recent correspondence from the master leaseholders that they're concerned about the lack of revenue for our city. So I'm wondering why we would spend $100,000 on, this, if we're in need of revenue. And maybe because, the city council could ask that the amount be decreased to reflect our small town revenue. And my other question is, and maybe I just missed this, has a comparison report been done to show the TOT before and after the $100,000 funding was implemented? Personally, I would ask that the city save this money, but that's just my opinion. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
AGP, is there anyone else?
There is nobody else in queue, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I will close item C1 and bring it back to council for council comments. I'll start out and probably circle back. I think that for me, I appreciate all your comments. Many of you who are chamber board members, chamber member, as myself and Councilmember Edwards' businesses both are. And I've been on the board, but this isn't about the chamber tonight. This is about an economic development contract that the city has with the chamber. So I think that those two things, although they are hard to differentiate because so many of the things cross over, the chamber's great. I'm a chamber member for almost 35 years, but we're not talking about that tonight. We're talking about an economic development contract that the chamber has with the city and the services and the scope of work. This isn't about canceling the contract or renewing it. It's another 10 months. This is just strictly about checking in because some of the items on this have been checked off. They've already been completed, or the desire for scope of work is changing because the council has changed and our goals have changed. So I think that just there's some confusion with that, and it is hard to differentiate what is chamber functions and what the chamber is doing for economic development contract. I've gone to all those listening sessions, and so then I would question, was that chamber or was that economic development, because they cross over. They're very similar. I have shared concerns with the city manager and with the chamber executive both about the staff time that's given to the contract and what's reasonable and what's the return on investment. So I do have a concern about those things for that economic development aspect. I appreciate that there's someone who's helping the businesses and the permitting and the challenges that come, that we do have that reputation always, whether it's real or not, navigating that in any city is challenging. But I also know as a council member that sometimes the economic development director contract has been privy to information the five of us aren't. And so for me, sometimes it's maybe going too far as involvement in city government or city actions that we're taking. So those are just my feelings right now. I'm going to support the contract. Obviously, I have some questions about the scope of work. We have a new city manager coming on, and I think that it's presumptive of us to assume what we think she does or doesn't need. She comes with a lot of years of experience, and I can go with leaving it vague in the sense that I think it's up to her to determine what level of involvement she wants with the economic development contract, as well as my concern with facilitating anything with the harbor. As far as city business, we negotiate closed session, that's private, with leaseholders and city council, and I wouldn't ever want advocating for a business to be contradicting to what our goals may be, trying to move forward on master leases and opportunities for the waterfront. So I do have concerns. I've made them, again, Erica and I talk very openly, and I appreciate that relationship, and I think that It is important, and I've said this all along, for cities and chambers to have good relationships. It's very important, and I am supportive of the chamber. But I think there's definitely some challenges in our contract and how we move forward with it. So I'm going to leave it at that for right now, and I'm going to turn to Councilmember Barton.
I was interested also in some of the items that were selected, and the one with the new city manager I thought was intriguing, and I'm thinking it will be quite helpful to her to speed up the onboarding process about who's who in the business community and that sort of thing. I think that's going to be helpful to her. There are new things here that are I think will be useful, and there are some that we have crossed off that maybe perhaps should continue on, but I think we'll figure that out as we go along with this particular iteration of the contract. So anyway, overall I'm pleased with the what's here and what we've heard from our various speakers about the way in which they have been able to use the services of the chamber or help in their business. So I think it's a good document.
Thank you. Councilmember Landrum.
I really appreciate, I think it's essential that the city have an economic development representative, and however that is done is, this seems to be the most cost-effective way, and I think Erica really gives it her all and has abided by the contract and the tasks that were asked of her, and now that we're to the point of modifying them, with the new city manager, I agree with Mayor Wixom that if I were a city, coming to a new job at that level, I would appreciate being able to ask for that help if I want, as far as the assistance developing relationships. Also, I'm curious to the terminology of key groups and individuals. To me, that is I agree, very vague, and I think that should be, it sounds kind of mysterious, actually, and I think that should be cleaned up, made a little bit tighter. Let's see. With enhanced communications, I think that, let's see, am I understanding this right? We're hiring a PR firm to do, like a social media firm, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So the city is asking that the chamber provide more content to what we're already paying the social media person to do?
Well, the communications firm would be responsible for developing some content that's probably more general, but primarily pushing the content out. So if we have something that's going on related to business opening or an event or something that is development related here in town, Erica would likely be developing that content to provide to the consultant to push out.
That makes sense. And then, let's see. The account, I guess that's the next contract. Let's see. Okay, these were some suggestions that I had, that we modify, can we modify to include prompt and like some kind of transparent reporting of the meetings, like for instance, reach, so that the community feels like they're in the know. It seems like that's kind of a hot topic, and maybe we could get some kind of feedback from what happens at those meetings.
Yeah, the chamber's reporting, like they did tonight, currently to the council quarterly.
Quarterly.
If you want something more frequent or a different format, we can certainly talk about that.
Okay, and then I thought if we could remove onboarding, as I believe that's done by HR for the social media position.
Which tab?
2C, is that right? I'm not looking at it. I have it written down and it could be wrong.
The social media item?
Yeah.
We can change.
I think that's 2E.
Yeah, 2E.
2E, okay.
Yes, we can remove onboarding. I think our intent was just in helping getting that firm established and familiar with the city and the business community.
And really important, I think, because I've been made aware throughout my experience here of 2 different businesses that have had really terrible situations, getting lost in the permitting process. So to me, that was, Eric and I talked about that, and it was a lack of communication within the city and Erica, and I wonder if we can find a way to, that's so important, and if we can find a way to prevent things like that happening. Another thing was one of the businesses on Quintana were not made aware of the extent of the road closure during the road work that was done there. And, things like that, I'm sure are attempted, but it seems like we could maybe be better at those things. I attended many of the listening sessions, and I had a hard time finding out about them myself. And I found that they weren't very well attended, and I also think that we could maybe improve that so that more people are made aware of them. Let's see. I think, let's see. Also, one suggestion I had was one way to use this resource might be to plan some sort of and it's upcoming, it will be Morro Bay's 60th anniversary, and I thought that might be something to put in there. That's all.
Thank you, Councilmember Edwards.
I think I have a question for, if I may, for Councilmember Barton. I was just curious if you'd be open to mentioning some of the previous items some of the old items. Were there things that you felt shouldn't be crossed off or that should continue that were crossed off? Just to clarify.
Let's see.
Sorry.
Maybe you want to continue on while she looks.
Yeah, appreciate that, Laurel. Sorry about that. I was just curious. I also wanted to just kind of make some comments on this. I really appreciate the mayor's defining that we understand as business owners the importance of having a healthy chamber. We also understand as leadership the importance of having economic development. And I do recognize, having been a part of the chamber for years, both as a board representative, a chair, and a business, that sometimes the lines do blur. And that's what happens when you're in a small town and you have an organization that really has excelled in defining relationships, and whether that's for development purposes, in assisting staff. Sometimes, we are a mighty and strong staff here, but we're small. And so sometimes we do need that assistance. And so I'm just looking at the economic development contract from that landscape, and recognizing that I see how there could be concerns on behalf of the community, that those lines are blurred, but I kind of look at our staff and how it's being viewed, that maybe there's too much time being taken for their day in and day out work. And that's where, the Chamber's work as an ombudsman, and that convener and bringing together of people is really important, because I don't see that our staff has the time to do that. So it is an interconnected relationship there, and it's sometimes hard to distinguish, what is a Chamber's educational event and what is one that's great for a community member, and oftentimes they are one and the same. And on that, as a business owner and a member, you can attend. As a non-business owner, you can also attend. I think there are numerous ways to find out
Timing is everything.
what things there are available for you to attend, right? And I think that overlap is what is confusing, right? But I think to think about anyone else doing this scope of work is, I don't know who else would do it and do it well. So that was just more of a comment. As far as the scope of work, I just wanted to know a little bit more if we've removed something that, and I only have Councilmember Barton to look to, who was here when this contract, first came into play, to make sure that we're not removing something that maybe, you feel would be best to keep in it.
I imagine that some of the things that have been crossed out are regarded as having been finished, but some of them are probably ongoing things that Erica would do anyway in her, just the nature of her work. So like looking at one that talks about attending regularly scheduled meetings with the city manager and the community development director, I think that's probably going to continue on, because as businesses come and need some help in getting themselves guided through the process, that will happen. That will continue to happen. There's a mention here about leading the effort to rebrand Morro Bay as a place to conduct business, and I think that's something that's going to be ongoing no matter what. That's item 2. Because that's something that's a concept that it just needs to happen. So I see that one as probably continuing on, somehow wrapped into the other things that are mentioned here. Let's see. I think those are the 2 that I pulled out. So I think that's kind of examples of something that's not going to completely go away, but maybe not be the main focus. So, yeah.
And then I was hearing, I think maybe Councilmember Landrum, there may be this kind of difference in assisting as opposed to what was the word I was looking for? It was mentioned earlier. Assisting versus as needed. Maybe there's just language as to some of the items where she was responsible for assisting, or the chamber, as opposed to as needed. And I'm just wondering if we needed to kind of say that in other places.
Well,
I don't know, Mr. Carpenter?
She's going to be working at the direction of the city manager. So the city manager is really directing the work that's being done, giving general direction. She does a very good job of working independently, but she typically checks in with me to get some general direction before she does so. And I think, the main purpose, I think, for me tonight was to get agreement from the council that generally this was the right direction. And And I think I'm hearing that you like the fact that it's aligned with the strategic plan, that it's updated to reflect the change in city leadership. I think we can strengthen, based on some of the comments that we heard, we can strengthen some of the communications discussion in here and reflect what you're asking for us. So, I'm comfortable with. It seems, Mayor, that the council is in agreement that the scope of work is generally positive and acceptable.
Yeah, I think that there was a couple small tweaks, and what Councilmember Barton alluded to actually in a new verbiage is under 1B before, where it listed having a meeting with the city manager and community development director has changed to plan and hold monthly team meetings. For me, that maybe is a little more than, I would rather have it say, at the direction of the city manager as needed, than an expectation that the chamber executive through that economic development contract would form those meetings. I think it would be, she's going to communicate with the city manager and take lead from that in the staff involvement and staff time that's appropriate, I think. Yeah, are you good with that?
I am.
Thanks. But other than that, I think, are we good with, this is 10 months, this is the scope of work.
As far as the rebranding, I would say, to me, rebranding is a final, like you rebrand something and you're done, or else you rebrand it again. So to me, that's, I think, why that's crossed off, because it's been rebranded, right?
I think we crossed it off because it focused on that effort, the new day in Morro Bay, and I think we're 3 years into this now, and if we're going to have a brand, I think we'll likely look at developing something different than the New Day and Morro Bay brand.
Thank you. And I appreciate the collaboration too with the other organizations and with Visit Morro Bay and the others. It does strengthen our opportunities overall for economic development, so thank you for that too.
Can I ask, just because there were several comments about the accounting and accounting of hours and invoices, and is there a way for the community to see these?
Benchmarks?
Yeah.
Well, we do get a monthly report with the invoice that talks about the tasks that were performed and the meetings that were attended or conducted. So, we are hearing about what has been accomplished each month. If you want to change the contract to require like hourly accounting, that would be a conversation that we would have with the renewal of the contract.
Thank you.
Is that, Mr. Carpenter, is that accountability, is that done through the city manager?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think just looking for benchmarks, what seems to be some of the comments is that the community's looking to see that the return on investment, there's some sort of accountability. And it is hard to do that sometimes. What does that look like? So with that, we'll look for a motion.
This is a receive and file
You're right.
item.
I was trying to back up. I was having computer failure earlier today, so we'll receive and file, and you have clarity on the direction.
Yes, we do. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you to the chamber. That will move on to item C2. I'll welcome Councilmember Ford back. Information item to review Morro Bay Garbage Service proposed increase to the maximum rate schedule and Proposition 218 procedures. Public Works. Thank you very much, Mr. Qualick.
Thank you, Mayor and honorable members of the City Council. I'll introduce this item by stating that the city received a rate adjustment application from Morro Bay Garbage back in December, so about 9 months ago. And we've gone through a process with Morro Bay Garbage Service of reviewing that application. We've brought on a third-party consultant to perform, for lack of a better term, a numbers review. The reason I say this is because when we received that application, it triggered a process by which the city has to comply with Proposition 218, which in our presentation tonight will go into. But I want to just state, generally speaking, that tonight's item is really a receive and file item. The purpose of us coming to you and presenting this tonight is to keep the City Council informed with what's going on with this potential increase and to keep the community informed here. So tonight, you're certainly able to ask questions of staff, but there will be no vote on any garbage rate increase. Janine Burlingame will provide the presentation tonight. She's been working with the hauler and on solid waste services for many years. We're also going to ask Assistant City Attorney Lana Lehman to provide some part of the presentation on the legal aspects of the request. And we also have R3, the third-party consultant that performed the numbers evaluation of the request here, that will also take a slide or two of the presentation so that we give you the best information we can on the hauler's request. I do see that the hauler is also in the house, so they could be available for questions if needed. With that said, I'll kick it over to Janine Burlingame.
Thank you and good evening. So as Greg mentioned, the hauler Morro Bay Garbage Service submitted a rate adjustment application in early December. That initial application had projected a shortfall to the revenue that was collected about $956,532. And that's basically a calculation. They're looking at their projected costs and then subtracting the revenue that they are anticipating to receive based on the current maximum rate schedule that has been set. And so with that shortfall, they're proposing a 30.62% increase to commercial and residential rates. And at the time of the application, they were proposing that that new rate structure would go into effect on March 1st of 2023. Obviously, that didn't happen yet. So the basis of the proposal is a couple of different things. So you have expenditures, increased wages, increased material costs. On the expenditure side, there are a couple of different items relating to revenue, specifically in the recyclables area. The recycling market is not rebounding as well as would be hoped after initial downturns occurred. In addition, the global supply market excesses result in fewer recyclables being purchased for use and generating revenue from that. So in the franchise agreement with the hauler, there is an article that outlines compensation and rates. It outlines the Proposition 218 area, which will be talked about a little bit later. But it establishes, when that contract was executed, it established the maximum rate schedule. It also had provisions in there that provide for the hauler and the city to mutually be agreeable to any increases or adjustments to that maximum rate schedule, and that's subject to the Proposition 218 process. In addition, it also allows for the provision of a set period of time of COLA adjustments or cost of living adjustments, again, subject to a Proposition 218 process in order to initiate that. So what we're going to move to is a little discussion, quick discussion about the city process and procedures. Once we receive the rate adjustment application, what we're going to do is evaluate that application to determine its reasonableness in the area of the costs and expenditures, as well as the revenue generated from the rate structure. Any findings that come from that get discussed with the hauler, and hopefully there may be some areas where we can negotiate down based on adjustments that are learned from that evaluation process. And then at that point, then we would move towards the Proposition 218 process, following the noticing requirements, facilitating a protest process that's part of that, as well as holding a public hearing and where the council would accept public comment, as well as additional protests that are submitted, that aren't submitted prior to that time, and then having a vote on the proposed rate increase. So right now, that public hearing date is scheduled to be October 10th of this year. And And what I'd like to do now is turn the presentation over to R3 Consulting. They're the third-party consultant that Greg mentioned that the city hired to do the evaluation of the rate adjustment application. So Jordan is here tonight. I will not try to mutilate your last name. And so what he'll do is kind of go over what they were reviewing, as well as what findings that came about from that review, and go over the costs and the revenue requirement. And then we'll come back to me for the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Janine. Good evening, Honorable Mayor. Good evening, council members. My name is Jordan Muratsuchi. I'm a senior consultant with R3 Consulting Group. We are municipal solid waste and recycling consultants who the city hired to review the rate application from Morro Bay Garbage Company. As a part of that review, it included reviewing that the rate application submitted was consistent with the franchise agreement, the contract that the city holds with the company. It included reviewing prior rate applications for consistency and historical perspective. We reviewed for mathematical accuracy and consistency of the application. We also reviewed audited financial statements from the company from the past 3 years. We looked at the company's projected revenues and expenses, and using all this information that we obtained, and in addition to requesting numerous documents over and over again from the hauler, we identified some recommended changes to the rate adjustment proposal from that review. Oh, there you go, okay. So as a result of our review, the total projected costs of Morro Bay Garbage Company were reduced by roughly $362,000. This resulted in total project costs for next year of being about $4 million, $4,171,972. As these are their total projected costs, this would also be their total projected revenue requirement. That is the revenue requirement such that they are meeting all of their costs, their expenses. So as a result, the revenue requirement would be equal also to that $4,171,972 figure. This reduced projected cost reduces the revenue shortfall to about $701,230. This reduces the rate increase proposed to 20.20%. And this rate increase, we find that this rate increase is reasonable and it covers the costs that the company needs to provide collection and disposal services to the city. This is a summary table. While our adjustments were not numerous this turn, you do see that that revenue requirement number in the green at the bottom is reduced by roughly $362,154. This comes out of reductions in depreciation, basically their depreciated truck schedules for their vehicles and containers. It also is a result from a reduction in company return, and as a result of all of those adjustments, it results in a reduction of franchise fees to the city, because franchise fees are simply 10% of gross revenues. So if gross revenues are reduced, meaning the company's earning less, then the city would earn less franchise fees as well. That was our scope and our review. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them, but I will also let Janine finish the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Jordan. So, as noted earlier, the hauler's application had indicated that they were wanting to propose a March 1st start date for when the new rates would be effective. And so after the evaluation was done, after we had meetings with the hauler, and we have a revised expenditures, revised revenue requirement, we now have a new effective date now that we are scheduling the public hearing. So the revised proposed effective date would be October 15th. And this is presuming we go through the Proposition 218 process and there's no majority protest and the council adopts the new proposed rates. As such, during that period of time between March 1 and October 15, those costs from the hauler are still being incurred. Those increased costs are being incurred under the old rate structure. And so there is a temporary retroactive increase that would be added as well to recoup those costs. And what that would be is, has been calculated as 18.38%, and that would be recouped over a 9-month period. And so what that would mean is after that 9 months, that temporary retroactive amount would expire and be removed from the bills. So the agreement, as well as Proposition 218, allows for a 5-year period of inflationary adjustments to the maximum rate schedule. We do have to go through a 218 process in order to initiate that and be able to not have to come back each year with another 218 process to do a CPI adjustment. So one of the things that we wanted to do was also add that into the public hearing and noticing for the upcoming October 10th public hearing date. And so on this slide and in your staff report, there's just this little illustration of what that would look like. So the proposed 20.2% rate increase with the retroactive adjustment amount would be considered year 1 when it's adopted and becomes effective October 15th. The next CPI adjustment that would occur would be January 1, and that would be for the calendar year of 2024. Not have to come back and do another 218 process for that if it's included in with the 218 process we're going to do now. The next CPI adjustment would occur in 2025 on January 1, January 1 of 2026, and 2027 as well. So you get a kind of an idea of what that would look like. In terms of a comparison to some of the other agencies within SLO County, the proposed rate increase of 20.2% is the second lowest behind SLO City. And the chart there illustrated where the other agencies were ranking as well. The next slide, you'll notice that these numbers are slightly different than what was in the staff report in terms of the residential rates when compared to other SLO County regional, the SLO County regional average. And what the numbers in the staff report didn't have was in the South County area, Pismo Beach, Arroyo Grande, Grover Beach. And so we reached out to the hauler, got that information, revised those numbers, and put them here. It didn't change the fact that for about 3/4 of the residential customers in the 19-gallon and the 32-gallon levels of service, they would see a lower rate than in comparison to the other areas within the county for that regional average. The 64-gallon, which is the next higher amount of account holders at 20%, sees a slightly higher rate than the county average. And the 96-gallon, which has a small 5% of account holders, would see a little bit larger increase in comparison. So we move on to Proposition 218, and what I'm going to do is turn it over to Lana Lehman, our Assistant City Attorney, and she's going to go over the process and some of the requirements related to that, and then we will come back to me to finish it up.
Thank you, Janine. Lana Lehman, Assistant City Attorney. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So with respect to Proposition 218, over the next few months, there are 2 basic parameters that we will have to cross. The first would be procedural requirements under Prop 218. And the focus for tonight is those procedural requirements, as the recommendation here is for a receive and file only. The second set of parameters that we'll have to meet will be substantive finding requirements. They are outlined in the staff report, but they will really be more detailed and more relevant to the planned upcoming hearing in October. So turning to the procedural requirements that are at issue right now. They require noticing, and the city has historically undergone the Prop 218 noticing process, and that is a positive assurance of public transparency. There is nothing that we are changing from in terms of historical practice there whatsoever. That notice is required to both the property owners and all hauler account holders. Our practice has historically, again, been that the notice is prepared by the hauler with city staff to review that notice and its form and requirements prior to the mailing. Then that notice needs to be mailed out to all of those account holders at least 45 days in advance of the public hearing. The notice will have to specify, and this will be quite a bit more detailed in the notice itself, it will have to specify the basis of and the reason for the fee or the rate proposal that's being presented. The date, time, and location of the public hearing, and very detailed directions for how to submit a written protest to the proposed rate increase. So with respect to the public hearing, the city is going to hold a public hearing prior to adopting the proposed rate increase. Again, that is, we're just giving you a forewarning of things to come with respect to an upcoming public hearing. At the conclusion of the public hearing, the city clerk is going to make a statement indicating the number of valid protests, as those protests were detailed in the notice. Basically, your clerk will take a tally of validly submitted protests and then provide that count to the council. And as Janine already mentioned, that public hearing is currently planned for October 10, and which means we will be getting that notice out very soon.
Sorry, and Lana, by we mean the hauler is getting that notice.
That's right.
Yeah, thanks.
The majority protest process, the proposed rate increase is, I'm being a little bit repetitive here of what was in the last slide, but you will receive written submissions from your citizens and count holders. The city clerk will count those. All protests have to be received prior to the close of the public hearing. The protest has to be written, and we are not receiving or accepting or considering valid any protest that is submitted electronically or by fax, if anybody uses fax anymore. Only one protest is valid per parcel. So if you have a protest from, say, both a property owner and a tenant of the same property, it's one vote per parcel. And the majority protest occurs if there's more than 50% of the affected property owners submitting valid written protests. In that case, the rate increase cannot be adopted. So our proposed next steps are, as required under the terms of our hauler franchise agreement with Waste Connections, we're going to work with them to prepare that notice, and they're going to get that notice out. We're going to set the hearing for 45 days. Again, that's planned to be October 10th, 2023. And then next slide. The recommendation is therefore that the City Council receive and file the presentation on the hauler's proposed rate increases on the maximum rate schedule and these Prop 218 procedures.
Thank you, Lana and Janine. And Jordan, Mayor and Council, that concludes our presentation. We're available for questions.
Thank you. Council questions? Councilmember Barton.
No questions.
Councilmember Landrum.
I would just like to thank Janine for the information on the comparison for the coastal cities, because I asked about that and found it missing, and thought that we should know that. Thank you.
Councilmember Edwards.
I'm good at this time.
Councilmember Ford.
Thank you. I do have a question. Can you further explain, and I think for our viewers as well in the audience, what it means if we get enough protest votes to deny the increase, or what happens if we get an abundance of protest votes, that process?
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Ford. Basically, the rate increase cannot take effect if that happens. It's frozen. They are stuck with the rates that they currently have, and those rates cannot move forward with any increase whatsoever. Do you want me to mention the CPI? Because they are currently under a structure where they will get one more year of CPI. So they get to finish out the term of their current rate structure. But after, I believe, if I remember correctly, the end of next year, so starting January 1, 2025, their rates would be completely frozen.
I would just add, too, that the way Prop 218 works is that if their request for a rate increase is denied either by the council or by a majority protest, the hauler could come back a month later and request another process, and we'd go through the 218 process again, as required by law.
Thank you for clarifying that, both of you. I have one other question regarding the mailing of the notices. Are those mailed? I didn't see it on the list. Maybe it was there, but I didn't see it. Are they mailed separately, or are they mailed with your bill? Like, how is that? How does the notice go out?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Ford. They're mailed separately.
That's my only questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll open public comment on item C2.
Good evening again. We went through this not but a year ago, and at that point, our bills were raised, and I will dispute that they were raised by 9%, but they were actually raised by 14.5%. And there was two different things that you were billing us, the ratepayers, for. So we felt that 15%. We did not feel the 9% increase that's stated here. I had a couple of questions. I was curious how the city knew to go ahead and put the $48,000 into the new budget. How was it that they knew that, and did you know that? We didn't know that. That's question number one. My second question is the $48,000, the $92,000 revenue increase from the garbage company to the city budget, is that before or after the $48,000 is subtracted? I'd like to know that as a ratepayer. I'd like to know, when this happened a year ago, there was some confusion. You know, there's always some people that don't receive them. How current is the list that you're using? Is it the city that's mailing the list? Is it I heard the city attorney saying is it actually the hauler who's mailing this? Who's responsible? And in all the 218 votes that I've experienced, which have been about a half a dozen over the last 20 years of different kinds, there's never been included a form that would help the person know what to put in, how to fill it out, and where to send it. Is that a courtesy that you could do this time, or are you expecting us, again, to create our own protest form and get that in at the proper time in the proper way? And I think it's a little bit deceiving to say that we're only 20% when you're actually adding 18% onto that for just under a year. So we will actually be paying a 38% increase right away. And I think that needs to be acknowledged. And I think that when you add the 15% from last year to the 20% this year, you're asking the public to pay 35% over the next 5 years. So I'm not sure why that little thing happened, that little 15% a year ago, instead of bundling it together now. Because it's a little deceptive, and it makes it look like, oh, we're not really increasing it that much. But yes, you really are, by a third, almost a third. Okay, those are my complaints as a ratepayer.
Madam Mayor, I was on a speaker's list, but in my attempts to save paper, I have consolidated all my items onto one sheet. I've tried that before, and I seem to always end up back up here, but that's okay.
Apologies.
No, it's no problem. I understand the garbage rates are going to go up. Everything's going up. I think we're all poised to have things go up on many fronts. I learned some interesting things tonight about 218. We've been through some recent 218s, one that came very close to being protested, as you may recall, when we were trying to build a wastewater treatment plant. And that's really my concern, is the assistant city attorney spoke to looking down the road. The garbage is really not the big issue here for the community. I'll have a $5 increase in my garbage. I don't think it's going to kill me. But we know that there is a massive shortfall in the water and sewer accounts, and that there's a lot of tap dancing, money juggling, pushing and shoving to try to keep us in the black on that. When are we going to see the numbers that will indicate what the next rate increase for our water and sewer is going to be? Now, while I still have a little time, I do have a typical Terry creative suggestion. I live in a residential neighborhood. Every Thursday morning, the garbage trucks start coming by promptly at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they run all day in our neighborhood. Now, there's 3 different pickup cans, so apparently there's 3 different trucks. I'm at peace with that. I've been a contractor all my life. I know about logistics and stuff. But what fascinates me is that in a couple of years ago, the routine would be is that 1 truck of each variety would go once up the street, and the garbage would be picked up on both sides. Now, for the last couple of years, we get 1 pass one way, and then they turn around a couple hours later and they come back down the other side of the street. And I understand the automated systems and all of that. It got me thinking, we don't generate a lot of garbage, and I don't know how that is with most people. Do we really have to have garbage service every week? What would happen if we just suggested to our hauler, we'd like to modify our contract in our residential neighborhoods to just pick up every 2 weeks? Think about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment on item C2? AGP?
Currently, we have nobody in queue with hands raised.
Thank you very much. With that, I will close public comment and bring it back to council. Mr. Kwolek, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, staff would like to respond to some of the questions that were raised during public comment. We'd be happy to do that. That's correct that the initial 9-month increase would be 38% or so. So we do acknowledge that. Last year, we had a 15% increase on the bill, only 9.07 or 9.07 was from the hauler. The rest was from the IWMA. The IWMA is the Joint Powers Authority that in many ways kind of oversees solid waste services across the county. If the City Council will recall that over a year ago, the county itself left that Joint Powers Authority, and that created additional costs that were then passed on to the ratepayers. Interestingly, since then, the county has rejoined the IWMA, and I believe there's been a 1% decrease in rates. So that's something of note. What were the other questions here? The reason that staff knew that the increase was coming during budget season, which roughly starts around January or February, is that we received the rate application from the hauler in December. So staff already knew for 2 or 3 months when we were preparing our fiscal year 24 budget. And so that's why we included those budget estimates in the fiscal year budget that we took to City Council. The revenue budget increase and the expenditure budget increase are 2 different things, so we're not minusing or anything like that, as was suggested. What was the other question? Oh, thank you. Staff would strongly recommend against creating some sort of separate guidance on how to submit a protest. Staff would strongly recommend that anyone wishing to protest simply follow the instructions on the notice itself. We don't want to create 2 separate processes that creates some confusion. Maybe I can give it over to the city clerk to talk a little bit about what we have in the lobby this year for folks who would wish to submit a protest.
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Kwolek. This year, I've prepared written instructions for City Hall staff, and as was said earlier, protests can only be submitted in writing and either mailed or hand-delivered to City Hall. We will have a safe just inside the lobby, and staff is instructed to not open anything directed to the city clerk because the protests are confidential until the public hearing. So they will date stamp the envelope and place it immediately in that safe. If a member of the public comes into the lobby and would like to personally drop it in the safe, we will still date stamp it, but allow them to do that so that they can see that it's immediately secured. Those will be transferred to my office and kind of carefully culled to make sure we're not saving public record requests or liability claims or some other type of mail that could come to the city clerk's office, and then secured in that office until the public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Swanson. And then the last question that we heard was who's sending out the notice? Again, the hauler sends out the notice, as they did last year, in a separate mailing than their bill.
Thank you, Mr. Kwolek. Council comments?
I have a follow-up question. Is this only printed in English, or will it go out in Spanish as well?
I'd like the hauler to come speak on that. This is Jeff Claren from Waste Connections.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Again, my name is Jeff Claren. It's interesting to note that this month is actually 30 years ago since I moved here to attend Cal Poly. So people were talking about how long they've been here. Kind of made me realize, like, oh, wow, it's been 30 years. Just to answer Greg's question, it's going to be in English only. It's actually, right now, it's tentatively 7 pages, but it's in English only right now.
Thank you for that answer.
Well, okay. I don't know. I mean, I just I'm concerned about that language barrier for some of our residents. So I just want to go on record as saying I wish that we could put more correspondence out in both languages. I don't have any other questions or comments at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I echo that comment? Anything?
No, I would like to echo that as well. It's important.
Councilmember Barton?
I'd like to echo that as well, because it's true. It needs to be in both languages. So.
Bilingual, yes.
Yes.
Councilmember Landrum?
That's unanimous.
If I may, Mayor, staff will work with the hauler to see what we could do.
Thank you.
If there's anything we could do this round.
Thank you. So this is a receive and file, and with that, we will close item C2 and move on to item C3. Thank you, Ms. Burlingame also, and Lana, thank you, and all of you. And this is you again, Mr. Kwolek.
Thank you, Mayor and honorable members of the City Council. Tonight we have your first business item that will require a vote. We are requesting authorization to, or rather we're requesting approval of a couple of resolutions to apply for grants. I'd just like to make a couple things clear, and I think our presenter, Dan Heimel of Confluence Engineering, will make these clear as well, but the City Council is not being asked to decide on whether or not to consolidate with the Rancho Colina system tonight. The city intends to apply for a grant application that will include a whole evaluation of what that consolidation would mean and any kind of processes or requirements that the city would need to be in compliance with to achieve that consolidation. In getting these grants, the city will get that evaluation at no cost to the city. The City Council may recall that last year, the city entered into an agreement with the owners of Rancho Colina where they pay for $25,000 of the cost of preparation of this grant. And the preparation of the grant is not expected to exceed the $25,000, which means that it comes at no cost to the city. And then further costs for this effort will be covered by the grant if awarded. So with that said, I'd like to kick it over to Mr. Heimel for his presentation.
Yeah, Mayor Wixom, members of the council, thanks for the opportunity to provide this presentation on consider of authorization of resolutions to apply for state revolving fund to execute agreements and other actions for the purposes of clean water and drinking water revolving fund grants to evaluate the potential consolidation of the city and Rancho Colina Mutual Water Company's water and wastewater utilities. That's a long one. Okay. So just a little bit about Rancho Colina. As most of you, I'm sure, know, it's a mobile home and RV park located just outside of the city limits, approximately a half mile northeast on Highway 41, highlighted in this aerial map here. For the Rancho Colina Mobile Home and RV Park, the Rancho Colina Mutual Water Company provides water and wastewater service to a disadvantaged community that resides at Rancho Colina. The water and wastewater utilities at Rancho Colina are aging, and their infrastructure is in badly need of upgrade, both on the water and the wastewater side. And so the origin of this, project or concept really came from the Regional Water Quality Control Board when they contacted the city about the potential to connect Rancho Colina to city water and wastewater utilities. And as an incentive for the city to consider this, the regional board identified and really pointed the city to two potential grant funding opportunities that could not only fund the consolidation infrastructure, but would also provide potential funding for any necessary water and wastewater system upgrades that the city would need to complete on its water and wastewater system to accommodate the consolidation. And the amount of money potentially available through these grant programs really is determined by the number of units that would benefit from this consolidation effort. So there are currently 69 mobile homes at Rancho Colina and spots for 57 recreational vehicles. And so when you apply the number of units, and just for this preliminary evaluation, we just looked at the 69 mobile homes. There's potentially $100,000 per mobile home unit available under the wastewater fund, and then $70,000 per mobile home unit available under the water funds, for a total of $11.7 million potentially available in total for the consolidation and the improvements to the city's water and wastewater infrastructure. And so just a little bit about where we've been. The Rancho Colina executed a cost share agreement with the city for the preparation of these grant applications. And we're here tonight, as Director Qualick acknowledged, is to, and I listed in lengthy detail, to consider authorization of resolutions to allow the city to apply for these grants. Once applied for and if awarded, then the city would perform, fully funded through these grant programs, the feasibility evaluation, the design of the Rancho Clino water and wastewater systems connection, evaluation and design of any necessary upgrades to city water and wastewater infrastructure, as well as, and prepare the application for the construction grants that would then fund any physical improvements necessary to make this consolidation happen. It's at this phase, you know, in the planning grant phase, that the city would look at any number of environmental, permitting, and other constraints that may or may not limit or preclude the potential consolidation with Rancho Clino. And additionally, it's at this phase that the city would evaluate the benefit of a potential consolidation and would bring back information to the city council and the public on what is the potential external funding that could be available from the consolidation that would benefit the citizens or the residents of Morro Bay. And then just moving further down the process, should the city and the council decide that it's worth further pursuing this opportunity, then the city would submit for the construction grants that then, if awarded, would fund the connections as well as the upgrades to city infrastructure. So just, you know, in concept, you know, really all of the efforts to date have been funded by Rancho Clino, and any efforts moving forward would be funded through the state grants with limited to no cost to the city outside of some staff time. There is no commitment to connect to Rancho Clino required of the city at this or, you know, at any of the future decision points in this evaluation. And then just finally, as to reiterate the potential benefit to the city, it's a potential opportunity to obtain external grant funding to help reduce the cost to city ratepayers for water and wastewater infrastructure upgrades that are already included in the city's CIP plans. And I think the only other thing we didn't mention, it's just preliminarily, the CIP projects that are being potentially considered would be the Nutmeg Tank and associated projects to improve the water system, and then the Atascadero sewer main upgrades are what appear at this point to have really the most direct nexus to accommodating utility connections to Rancho Clino.
That concludes the presentation. We'll take questions.
Thank you. I'll lead off. Thank you. Questions. So I asked Mr. Qualick earlier, and I'm not sure if when you're doing this grant application, for starters, we have Measure F. Are you going to include, obviously, that in the opportunities of whether or not we're even eligible to do this, where it restricts the boundaries of the city? We don't have a sphere of influence. What would annexation look like? And at this point, my understanding from Measure F is that we can't provide utilities outside the city limits. So I'm concerned. I mean, I know we're not paying anything to do this, but if that's a moot point right there, if we can't do something without going to a vote of the people of the community before we even do this, then where are we going with it?
Thank you for the question, Mayor. Those are items we'd certainly look at. There's also a question about whether the Coastal Commission would allow us to provide water and wastewater services inland. All of those would be looked at, obviously, as part of the evaluation. In staff's view, the potential benefit of being able to get around some of these obstacles could be great in terms of helping to fund our water and wastewater infrastructure projects. There could also be some benefits down the line in including a disadvantaged community into the sphere of influence of the city of Morro Bay for the purpose of grant applications in the future. But of course, the decision about whether or not we'd actually consolidate, even if it were possible, wouldn't come to council until later on in the process.
Okay, you referenced in this possible funding for the main Atascadero Street sewer replacement. That's on the books for this year, and we already have the funding for that, correct? Set aside?
Thank you for the question. We have funding set aside from our sewer fund for that.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. And
I'm sorry, if I could just add, we have some funding set aside. I don't know that we had the entire project budgeted for this year. I think there was an out year.
Okay.
So we're budgeted up to this year.
Okay, but we do have it on the books.
Yeah.
The Nutmeg water tank, it's been brought up about being 5 times the size of what we currently have for build out. How does this affect that? Would it need to be bigger? Is that going to affect the volume opportunities then for community growth? Where does that play in on that?
Thank you again for asking the question, Mayor. All of that would be evaluated as part of the evaluation that we would perform if awarded the grant. Those are questions that are good ones that we don't have answers to now.
Okay, I have one more question, then I'll stop from there. If we move forward with this down the line, and the sewer lines are going in, the water lines are going and all that, is there an expectation that there would be money paid towards the wharf then, that for the capital project that we built, just the same as we talk about with state water? Somebody punches a line in, they need to pay us for the pipes we ran out to here. Is that going to be the same thing with something like this? Are they going to pay for part of that capital cost for usage?
Thank you for the question, Mayor. I'll answer it broadly speaking that payment for the wharf program will occur over the next 30 years through debt service. Not all of it, but the vast majority of it. And so certainly if Rancho Colina were to consolidate into the city systems and the folks there became ratepayers, then indeed they would be paying for the wharf in that debt service. Perhaps they wouldn't have been fully exposed as our current ratepayers, depending on how many years it would take for that consolidation. But there wouldn't be any kind of, I don't imagine there would be any kind of extra fee if that's what the question hints at, if there'd be like a catch-up fee or something like that.
That's what I was asking, yeah.
I mean, we can certainly explore it if that was the desire of the council.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for right now. Councilmember Landrum, you want to start?
Yes, Mr. Heimel has said that it would only cost the city staff time. Does that include his time as a consultant as well?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Landrum. I believe you're asking if Mr. Heimel's time, if the city is paying for Mr. Heimel's time as part of this, and the answer is no. That's, Mr. Heimel's time is being paid for by Rancho Colina.
Okay, thank you. And to follow up on the mayor's question about the tank that's, the Nutmeg tank that's 5 times bigger than needed, are you saying that it might not be needed, that you you might find that out in the study, or that it's oversized, or is that what you're saying?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Landrum. We'd look at whether or not we'd need any capacity upgrades in the tank as part of the evaluation. I would not frame it that the tank isn't needed. The tank was determined to be needed as part of the One Water plan that the city approved in 2018. And the reason it's needed is due to pressure upgrades for fire flow, particularly at Del Mar Elementary School. There are fire flow issues there where if there were to be a fire at the school, the city wouldn't meet the standard flow requirements and water rate requirements.
Okay, and can you, I wasn't clear on the RENA numbers. If the city were to add that to our sphere of, to the city, would that, those existing houses that were already built be, I mean, they would be taken away from the county's numbers, but would they be added to the cities? Or how does that work?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Landrum. I personally feel that there's some potential to add them to the city, depending on how this is structured. Obviously, if the city were to annex Rancho Colina down the road, then yes, sphere of influence, something we'd look into. For example, if we were applying for a grant that related to sewer or water, I think we'd have a very strong case, even if they're only in our sphere of influence. Maybe for a parks grant, we wouldn't have as much of a case.
Thank you.
Member Barton?
I want to thank you both for looking into this opportunity and seeing a little bit of a different approach than some of our other grant applications, and I really appreciate you taking the reins here and looking for ways to improve our overall system. So thank you.
Councilmember Edwards?
Actually, I'm going to hold out for a minute here.
Thank you. Councilmember Ford, questions?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Wixom, and thank you, Director Kwolek, for the report. I do have two questions. One is, when I was looking through the report, I did see the additional homes that would be added. Did I miss it, or did it say somewhere like approximately what the population is? Did it say, what was it? 69, okay. Right, okay, so plus the RVs, okay. So my question is, remembering back when we discussed this previously in council, there was talk about the possibility of the state of California requiring us to assist the neighboring community of Rancho Colina, the possibility that it could be required in the future. And the thought was that maybe we could possibly be proactive and get the benefits of, the money that we could get to help with our projects for our water projects. So, and that might go away if we were to just be required to help them in the future. And so I'm just curious where we are on that, if that was something that was still a possibility, or what your thoughts are on that.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Ford. It certainly is a possibility that if the city were to not consolidate or not to take steps to consolidate Rancho Colina into the city system, that the state could come in and try to force the city to do so. It's certainly a risk. It would at this point be a bit of speculation to say that the state could actually do that. If the city were dead set against it, we could probably fight it.
Okay, thank you. I just was remembering that and just wanted to see where we were on that. So that's my only question. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll open public comment, and I do have a speaker slip. Mr. Simons.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Terry Simons. This was my main event for the evening. I don't know why it's always at the end of the agenda. When I first started reading this, the word in the statement from the resolution of consolidation rung a bell with me. I've spent 40 years in the water company business in various levels, developing them, managing them, designing them, building them. And I'm very much aware of the state requirements that particularly small water companies, and it's not real clear how that's defined, can be obliged to consolidate when possible. What I'm concerned about here is that clearly we're not adjacent to Rancho Colina. There is a magnitude of difference between the size of Rancho Colina and the size of Morro Bay. Having said all of that, I think taking over providing basic services to Rancho Colina could have long-term benefits, particularly if it not only doesn't cost the city money, but if it has the opportunity to provide continuing income to the city to help us defray the costs of a very expensive sewer and soon-to-be expensive water system. So I'm fundamentally in favor of this. I know it's going to be extremely complicated. I think that the council should get ahead of this by bringing members of the community into some sort of a blue ribbon panel or select committee or whatever. You've done this before, you know how to do it. But pick a few people in the community that are leaders in the community that are not necessarily political nor in staff, to work with staff and the council, because it's a very, very complicated issue. Like I say, I saw the consolidated word in here and I immediately knew that somebody in the game had told you, probably in closed session, that there was a very real possibility that played right, there could be a mandatory consolidation, although I don't know how it ever would work out. So to that end, I would hope that you would look favorably at this, and when you do, I've spent a lifetime digging ditches and putting pipes in them. The ditch is the most expensive part of the process. When you dig that half-mile ditch from an interconnection point at the roundabout, which we've already talked about, out to Rancho Colina, I think it's important that you put as many things in there as possible. And one of the things that would be high on my list is to be taking reclaimed water up the El Moro or the Moro Creek right away, because I think that eventually there are going to be users of that water. Agriculture is big in that area, and I would hope that that will be brought up. Thank you.
Thank you. This item's open for public comment.
Betty Winholtz. It was touched on, and this may be one of those questions that needs to be answered through a blue ribbon committee or in the scope of the grant that's being asked. But will we actually be giving them our water as it comes to us, a state water if it has to be, or will it be a blended? Because they have their own source of water now. So maybe we won't be shooting them as much water, pure, a complete allotment, because they've already got some of their own, and it allows them to purify what they've got. So I'm curious to know if that's one of the questions that will be answered later or now. Number 5, on the list in the one of the resolutions talks about a consultant. Are we assuming that Mr. Heimel will continue to be the consultant? Will at some point we go out for bid? And I'm a little confused because if he's our consultant but Colinga is paying for him, how does that all work? And like, who's really his boss? And so who gets to follow that? Another question I had was the idea of the sphere of influence. And again, is this a question for now or later? Will we leapfrog that sphere of influence, or are we going to do a contiguous thing all the way up to Rancho Colina? I was surprised to hear that Del Mar is relying on Nutmeg for their fire suppression because they're closer to the Blanca tanks. And so how does Blanca fit into that in terms of the elementary school? And the mention of all these things will decided later. I know you can't necessarily, but could you give us a ballpark? Are we talking a year from now, 2 years from now? When do we think we're actually going to get a grant, have some information to actually come back? Are we talking months, or are we talking years? Thank you.
Public comments open for item C3. Anyone else? Mr. McElvain? No? AGP, is there anyone in the queue?
Thank you, Mayor Wixom. There are currently no raised hands in the queue.
Thank you. With that, I'll close public comment and bring it back to council.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor Wixom. Right as I said that, Jim raised his hand.
Jim raised his hand. Thank you.
Oh, and now he has put it down. I apologize. Oh, wait, now it's back up. Jim, you are allowed to talk.
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah. My name is Jim, and I have just a simple question as to if you have to put pipes to that new, to the mobile home section, how will that interfere or with the roundabout? And would it be before, after, or during? Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. With that, I will close public comment, bring it back to council. Mr. Kwolek, an idea on the timeline? Or Mr. Heimel, either one?
Yeah, I mean, this is likely going to be a protracted process. So we're at a decision point right now where the city is at a position where it can submit the application for the planning grant. I think as the council knows and the city staff knows, getting from a submitted application to award to agreement on a grant opportunity can take some time. And then that kicks off the planning evaluation, which, considering the number of different considerations involved here that have been brought up by the council and the public, that's going to take some additional time as well. So let's say, it's 6 months to get a grant agreement, it's a year to do the evaluation. At the end of the evaluation, it goes to council for their consideration to then submit another grant application. So you kind of add that together and just get an understanding that, this evaluation and the different grant application processes are going to play out over a number of years.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Kwolek, clarification on the consultant process. If Mr. Heimel's working for us and Rancho Colina, is that, who's he ultimately working for then in the end, us or them? Or, I'm not trying to say it's us against them, but.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mayor. Mr. Heimel reports to us. His contract is with us.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
By us, I mean the city.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Council comments?
Was it clarified as, I don't know, maybe this is something that you wouldn't know now, but maybe in the future, but about the mixing of the water? And I know the nitrate levels were really high, which is one of the reasons. So is that even something that you can do, or do they just need they would just switch over to our water fully? Or is that to be determined?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Ford. If I understand the question, what exactly would we be selling them in terms of water? And we would call that municipal mix. So once state water hits our King's tank, it's no longer state water, it's municipal mix, and we can sell that legally.
Yeah, so thank you for that as well. But what my question is Rancho Colina, they currently have water, however, their nitrate levels are high. So are they wanting to completely switch over to our water, or would there be additional water to add to their current water to dilute the amount of nitrates? Is that even something that's possible? I think that was what Ms. Winholtz was asking, and I was just trying to get clarification.
Yeah. Thank you for the question, Councilmember Ford, and the clarification. I apologize, I misunderstood the question. I think the general vision is that we would give them our water. They do have infrastructure and facilities up there that the city could potentially utilize, and we're kind of going 6 steps ahead right now, but in theory, the city could potentially negotiate acquisition of that infrastructure, or the city could even potentially use some of the land that they have up there, which is quite, there's a lot of it. For other uses. So I think it is too early to tell whether or not we'd be diluting their nitrate-filled water or just giving them water, but the goal is that whatever water they'd be using as part of this consolidation would meet state standards.
Okay, that does answer my question. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Comments?
I was wondering if you could talk about or address the question about the Blanca tanks in Del Mar.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Landrum. The Del Mar Elementary School is in the Nutmeg zone. It actually is closer to Nutmeg than Blanca.
So the Blanca tanks don't help the fire suppression for,
No.
or the pressure,
Right. Yeah, it's an issue that was identified in the One Water plan. And so the solution that's been identified is an upgrade to the Nutmeg tank in addition to other upgrades in the system.
Okay, and you said something about 6 steps ahead. Will we look at something like what Mr. Simons has mentioned, adding as many things possible to the ditch as in anticipation of future opportunities?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Landrum. It's certainly an opportunity that would be worth exploring. As you mentioned, it's a few steps ahead. It's a possibility. We know that early on in the project development of the wharf, there was a question of whether or not we can get recycled water, for example, up to farmers, up to 41. You know, could that be an opportunity for the city? Will there be future development in that corridor? And if so, would we want to install infrastructure that would be able to accommodate that in the future? It's certainly something we'd want to look at. I don't even think we'd be looking at that quite in this phase yet, but I would suggest that if the council were interested in looking at those sort of opportunities, we get those on our radar once we get the grant so that we make sure that our scope is aligned with the vision of the city council.
Would that make it possible to do like some of the IPR wells in that area instead of?
Thank you for the question. That's certainly a possibility. It's also a possibility that, you know, I'm just going to throw the idea out there that we could relocate the Nutmeg tank to the Rancho Colina property because we do have some access issues at our current location. So there are certainly things that I think city staff would want to explore with this opportunity. There's probably other things that the council would want to explore. We'd likely want to take this through PWAB as well to get their thoughts. So, but again, right now, we're just, of course, trying to apply for the grant.
Thank you.
Councilmember Barton?
I don't have any more questions.
Thank you. I think I think that, you know, we're supportive of this effort, cautiously supportive. I think for me, the main concern is making sure that it doesn't disenfranchise our community in any way, shape, or form. First and foremost, you know, the situation at Rancho Colina I know was a problem when I was here 15 years ago, so it hasn't gone away. I'm sure it's become worse as the regulatory requirements change, and there are opportunities for them as well as us. I just want to make sure that we include in that information when you're looking at the grants, all those things with the sphere of influence, annexation, Measure F, and all the things to keep us legal on our end. With that, I will ask for a motion for C3 for the resolutions.
I would like to recommend that the City Council adopt resolutions number 5123 and 5223, authorizing the city manager to apply for state revolving fund financial assistance, execution of such agreements, and any other action required for the purposes of the Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Fund grants to evaluate potential consolidation of the city and Rancho Colina Mutual Water Companies' water and wastewater utilities.
Second, someone?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Well, can I just ask, I was going to see if maybe we could do an amendment to that to add a committee to evaluate or to.
Can we wait till after we get the first round? I think that would be premature at this point, maybe to start a committee till we know what the grant applications is going to include.
Okay, all right. Just.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Heimel, Mr. Qualick. With that, we will move on to council declaration of future agenda items. I have an item. I'd like to ask for council support to have Director Schifoni bring back an agenda report on potential updates to harbor lease management policy with a focus on financial sustainability, and direct Ted to use resources from HAB and CFACT as he believes appropriate for preparing a report. Can I get council support?
I second that.
For council support?
I support it.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other future? Any other future? We're out of practice. Any other future agenda items?
I have one. I would like to propose that we have in our goals that we have a joint meeting with the Planning Commission and the Harbor Advisory Board, where they can conduct a short series of joint sessions to review an approach on addressing the city's future needs around the Embarcadero Harbor power plant and associated waterfront facilities and those that affect them. And the initial phase would address issues around overlap and gaps between the two committees and the best approach to tackle issues around the planning process and eventually updating the waterfront master plan.
I would support that. I'll give her support. And you'll get with staff and maybe give some clarity on
Okay.
that, since you're the liaison for HAB.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I have one other. I've been made aware by Director Graham that there are several short-term vacation rentals that are being removed from the list and for non-compliance. And before any new spots are issued from the waiting list, with the Downtown Design District, we are kind of looking at those sorts of things. I was wanting to suggest that we put a moratorium on that until we discuss that.
Moratorium.
On putting on filling
vacancies.
the vacant spots.
While you review it. Council support? I would support that if we're just going to review it. I don't think it would hurt to postpone.
Until we get to that week within the Downtown Design District.
Yes, no? Yes?
Sounds fine.
Okay.
We're not stopping now, we're just, putting a hold on it. Clarification? Yeah. What do you need?
So that's a future agenda item?
Yes.
Okay. And I don't know if we'd necessarily need a moratorium, but the item would be...
hold, some sort of,
Okay. And we'd need to take a look at the coastal approval of the current plan, but I think that city management could work with council on applying the process in a way that accommodates the Downtown Design District's current meetings.
Scope of work. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Mr. Carpenter, thank you again for everything you've done for us. We appreciate it. With that, we are adjourned.